to start. Can I please request you all to settle down? Ladies and gentlemen, please take a seat. Can I request the organizers to usher everybody into the main hall? We are ready to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, our next dialogue is on bridging the digital divide. Over to you, Saqib. Please begin.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. People at the end, if you can please get seated. We would like to start the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come through quite a big panel this morning, and there was a lot of discussion on different topics. Some of the topics that I have noted, and some of the discussion points were Pakistan's biggest problem is population. Climate change is definitely impacting us. Exports must be increased. There is no way out. AI, digital divide, that is the key direction to move forward. Youth of Pakistan, are they skilled or not skilled? What we have to do with them? Are we over-taxation there? Are we over-regulated today? Or we need to have the services exports, which should be more than our overall industrial exports as well. There is a lot of topics, and in any of these events when we sit today, these topics keep on coming and going. And I think there's a lot of discussions, but what is missing today is about execution. I think we come in these policy documents, we come into these policy discussions, and we start talking about the same topics. We understand what are the reasons of these topics as well, but where we don't go and digest is what we have to do to get that thing rolling, how it has to be fixed. And that's what we will be doing today in this panel when we talk about the bridging the gaps through the digital divide. Everybody is talking about digital is the way to move forward. We in this country are getting more and more into this digital direction that we are talking today. The tools and the definitions of the digital are increasing day by day. The companies are coming up with daily new digital reactions, actions, and tools just to make sure that we are able to take into account our personal and private and professional lives into the next phase as well. We have very two esteemed guests as of in the stage today. Amir needs no introduction. If I have to give his introduction, then we have an issue. And Mujib is one of the more diligent, I will say, the new dynamic CEOs of today that has been taking into consideration, especially the youth of today and how his company is able to make an impact on that digital divide as well. So thank you very much to be part of the panel as well. Amir, you are on the left. I will start with you first. I'm hearing you a lot these days and all the discussions about cashless and digital economy. And there's a lot of talk about how especially you in your personal capacity and Jazz as its brand is making an impact, and how this banking, these fintechs, and all these angles are coming together as one window. And what are the top 3 things that you feel are important to get that cashless economy more in the market? And also, what are the 3 barriers that are stopping you at this point of time to make it better?
Okay. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. It's still morning. Let me start with the first point that you made about execution. I think we all recognize what needs to be done. Why do we need to do it? But I think where we fall short is the execution. Who's going to do it and when? And based on my conversations with the government over the last year and a half, we've been talking about one of the things that we need is to really raise our tax to GDP ratio. But at the same time, we also recognize that half of the economy is undocumented. So this cashless economy, which is perhaps not necessarily a very good name, like it can have a different interpretation also. Let's just call it digital economy. The whole purpose of the digital economy was to first start documenting. Right? When you document, you have the opportunity to demand, which is taxes. At a retail level, almost about 90-95% of our economy is undocumented. So that was one of the first proposals that I had taken, and then the Prime Minister graciously actually not only took it seriously, but also decided to chair this particular meeting and committee himself. And it's a cross-functional committee which has got not only the private sector, but it has also got all the relevant stakeholders, including the central bank governor, FPR, Minister of Finance, Minister of IT, NADRA, PTA. So all the key stakeholders are involved in that discussion. It happens almost every 2 weeks, and it has got some very concrete objectives about what we want to achieve by June 2026. So we're already 6 months into this program, and we've had, I would say, reasonable success. I wouldn't call it an A+, but it's not also a C. So we're there, slowly and surely we are moving ahead. What are we trying to achieve? What we're trying to achieve is that we should declare a war on cash, because when a transaction is not digitized, it leaves no digital fingerprints. One of the best and the biggest benefits of anything digital is that it allows you to see where the transaction originated and where it ended. And once you start doing that, you have the opportunity not only to get rid of the AML and CFT risks, but also eventually bring it into the remit of taxation. Now, that's not the primary purpose from my perspective. I think the first thing is really about convenience. We have to take the cash out of where it resides right now under the pillows into the digital wallets. And everybody over here is now completely concerned and almost obsessed that we now need to bring in the legal interventions. When you ask me about one of the top 2 or 3 things that we need to do, we have to mandate digital acceptance at all retail. So cash is obviously accepted, but we are now at the back of RAST trying to enforce that a RAST QR is accepted at every single retail. Now, people have a choice not to use it, but it should be available. So one of the key goals is that by the end of this fiscal year, which is June 2026, close to about 2 million of Pakistani merchants should be able to accept RAST payments. And we have seen a rapid increase on the usage of this particular thing, and all the stakeholders over here are completely committed. So that was number 1. Number 2, so this is the supply side. At the demand side also, what we're doing is we're trying to open more and more wallets, which are technically speaking bank accounts, for the bottom of the pyramid and the middle of the pyramid. Banking has done a great job up to this point, but perhaps the masses have been ignored. So the second emphasis is on the push to make sure that accounts and digital wallets are opened everywhere. And the third key pillar of this committee also is that the government is also a very big business in terms of writing checks and receiving payments. So there is a dedicated subcommittee which is forcing all the government entities to get rid of cash, even if they're sending a check, and to start sending money directly to people's bank accounts. And whenever they have to accept a payment, it has to be digitally done. So these are the 3 big asks, and I think we are on target to deliver some of the very, very ambitious numbers for 2026. I think the tone at the top has really helped. We've tried to do it in the past also as a good idea, But I think when the Prime Minister champions it, when the Finance Minister is sitting over there, when the Central Bank Governor, FBR, and all the key stakeholders are there, I think it moves beyond a good idea. It becomes into an imperative. And there is a dashboard that's looked upon, and whoever is red on the dashboard, and trust me, you don't want to be red on that thing, whoever is red on that dashboard is taken to task. So I think that's what we're doing, and I'm very proud to be part of this initiative. Our company, in its humble ways, both from Jazz as a telecom operator, Jazz Cash as a fintech, and Mobilink Bank as a bank, are contributing to this agenda and driving it.
Amir, we also want to know about what are the 3 barriers which are stopping right now you. We understand that this whole dynamics is working in that direction, but what is stopping as well?
Barriers are mostly in people's minds. So initially when you ask people to move from cash to digital, the first barrier is, do I trust it? Is it safe? Is it prone to fraud? At a retail level, when you go, some of the barriers are slightly different. They're afraid, quite honestly, about getting into the tax net. And it's not only about getting into the tax net. I think they're perhaps more concerned about how they will be treated by the taxman. I think that's the barrier. So in many of those who are familiar with banking and POS, point of sales equipments, we discuss this thing called merchant discount rate. So we have lowered the discount rate, so there is no barrier, no friction. So the financial viability for the low-end merchants has been taken care of. Even then, we feel and we sense some resistance, which is basically people try to avoid coming into the tax net. Now, paying taxes is a national obligation. People rationalize it by not paying, saying कि जी हमें हुकूमत ने वापस क्या दिया है, सड़कें भी टूटी हुई हैं, एजुकेशन भी मैंने अपनी खुद करनी है, हिफाजत भी खुद करनी है, अस्पताल के पैसे भी मैंने खुद देने हैं. So वो अपने आप को justify कर देते हैं कि यार मैंने taxes नहीं देने. Now that has to change. Technology alone can't do that. It is both a carrot and a stick. And I think once you start using those taxes to improve the lots of the masses, people will feel a little bit more confident. And also what I have suggested is कि जी टैक्स के जो रेट्स हैं वो आप थोड़े से कम करें और जो लीकेजेस हैं उनको बंद करें. So it's not really how much do you tax, are you effectively collecting the tax whatever exists. So that to me are the 2 biggest barriers. One was commercial, which we have taken care of by reducing the MDR rates. So there is literally no resistance for the merchants to get there. The second is a lot more deep-rooted, which is basically our approach towards getting into the documented economy.
I think Amir raised a very valid point. It's important that government can set up this and the private sector can provide you all these tools, but at the end of the day, adoption is something that we need to do. And that adoption is not in the people in this room. I can tell you that almost 90% of the people in this room will be using this digital economy and the cashless economy, but it's about whom are the people we interact with, how we need to push them to that level that they start working on that digital economy, what Amir is highlighting. And I think that's very important that we play our part, because it's very easy all the time to blame the government, to blame the people. Okay, they don't have it. They are doing what they are doing. If Prime Minister is chairing a meeting for every 2 weeks, it shows the importance of that specific topic as well. Thank you very much, Amir, for that one. Mujib, coming to you, overall, in the Finance Minister's speech today, he again highlighted Pakistan is improving. People are investing. There is a lot of positive things that are happening. The infrastructure is absolutely improving. And then he also mentioned some of the companies are leaving as well. What are the things at this point of time in Pakistan, what is really important to get that in framework in Pakistan for the digital economy, and how the people can make sure, the companies can make sure that what they are investing in Pakistan is safeguarded as well. एक बहुत बड़ा इशू हमारा ये आता है कि जब हम कस्टमर ये देखता है कि कंपनी पैसे बनाने लगी है तो उसको लगता है कि ओहो मैंने तो नुकसान कर दिया, इस कंपनी को मार्जिन नहीं बनाना चाहिए था. और बाज़ का जब वो कंपनी मार्जिन बना ले तो गवर्नमेंट कहती है हो आप इसको टैक्स कर दो बिकॉज इसने तो मार्जिन बना लिया है. और जब हम अपने पर्सनल बिजनेसेस करते हैं द ओनली थिंग दैट वी रन आफ्टर इज हाउ टू क्रिएट दैट मार्जिन. How that mindset can be changed as well.
Thank you, Saqib. Literally a multi-billion-dollar question. I'll try to take a stab at it. I think when we look at the macroeconomic environment in Pakistan, as well as the geopolitical environment globally, there are several factors that are impacting it. I'll speak maybe a little bit about that, and then I'll come to some more specifics, tools that globally economies and countries have used successfully to navigate through this macroeconomic as well as geopolitical landscape. Some might use the term landmine, but a landscape, let's stick with that, that we find ourselves in. I think we operate in an environment where volatility is a norm, both from a geopolitical standpoint as well as a macroeconomic standpoint. Any country that is able, through its policy making, stay consistent through this volatility and build resilience in their fundamentals over a period of time, we've seen examples over the last 8 to 12 months, has been able to come through it successfully. Pakistan has taken several steps as demonstrated and benchmarked by various global institutions. I think a message of staying the course and increasing the pace of that reform is what we are also hearing from those same institutions. And that is going to be key over the next 12 to 24 months for Pakistan to be able to successfully navigate this geopolitical as well as macroeconomic volatility globally that we find ourselves in. Now, coming to the second part of perhaps what you were referring to, any investor, private capital markets have roughly anywhere between 5 to 6 trillion in credit being dispersed. This last year, private credit outpaced the credit availability from traditional institutions that organizations and countries were using previously. Both traditional markets, capital markets, as well as private markets rely on standardized benchmarks and indices to assess a country or the companies operating in that country. Now, I'll give you two examples sort of specifically addressing what you refer to as the digital divide or digital infrastructure, and that's some of what Amir was talking about from a infrastructure standpoint is also covered within that. One is what we call the sovereign risk indicators. This is a benchmark that S&P develops, but it is used by global institutions, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, IMF, any other institutional investor looking at a country or companies within the country is going to look at such an indicator from S&P or from other providers. Now, what is covered in such an indicator? Besides your usual political risk, economic risk, more and more what we're seeing is emphasis because of technology, because of what Gen AI has been able to accomplish over the last 12 to 24 months. Digital infrastructure is playing a very, very critical role in how institutions as well as private markets are assessing the vitality and sort of effectiveness of a country from a risk investment standpoint. And same goes for companies that operate in that jurisprudence. A couple of factors that are covered in such indicators. Does the country have an effective digital policy? How digitized are services, government services in that country? How easy is it for businesses to use those digital services to conduct business, to meet compliance standards in that country? I will not go into the details of what the state of each of this is in Pakistan, but I think it is very important that we as business leaders and government policymakers understand that such measures are very, very important when it comes to attracting investment in the country and when it comes to attracting investment in companies operating in that country. One last example I will give is what we call a digital infrastructure credit assessment scorecard. This is implemented across 50 plus countries, and again, whether it is funds, whether it is institutional investors, they will look at tools like this to assess. We talk about data centers a lot. That's something where a lot of investment is happening in our region. Large entities like Google and Microsoft have invested in that space. One of the key drivers is access to energy for such investments, how that energy is being sourced. Do we have a policy that encourages investors globally in this space? So developing such frameworks that speak to these standards that are accepted and used globally is extremely critical if we are to take advantage of the billions of dollars that are being spent in this space.
Thank you very much, Mujib. And you rightfully pointed out on the digital infrastructure and which are the key factors that are required in any country to develop on that front. Amir, coming back to you, I recently saw Jazz rebranded itself with Jazz World, bringing all these parameters together. Do tell us about what this rebranding means for the Jazz. And my second question in the same direction will be, and if I will not ask this question, it will not be fair with the audience as well, and that is about this 5G auction and the spectrum. What it means for the people, what it means for the companies who are going to deploy it, and what it means for the government. Are all these three directions seeing in the same lens, or everybody is working on their own direction and agenda? Difficult one. So need you to answer all three parameters there.
The second one is obviously more important and relevant to everybody, but let me take a minute to talk about Jazz World. The two things you need to remember. Jazz World is beyond telecom and beyond Pakistan. So as we have grown from being a monolithic telecom operator that was selling SIMs and building towers, we've gone into fintech, we've gone into banking, we're in entertainment, we're getting into health and education. So we now are approaching many different verticals at the back of serving our customers through the smartphone. And I wish that Musaddiq Saab was here, because I could actually perhaps highlight that this is the biggest equalizer that we have. So when we talk about elite and non-elite, if you actually put a smartphone in a person's hand, you give them education, you give them commerce, you give them an opportunity to earn, and the means to learn. So I think the more we develop this particular ecosystem, we can actually undo years of infrastructure lagging behind. Somebody mentioned that we have 25 million kids out of school. We don't have enough time, we don't have enough bricks to bring them into becoming educated in the traditional manner, but the smartphones can do that. Internet can do that. A broadband in every home, a smartphone in every hand, a QR code in every shop is basically what digital Pakistan should really aspire to. Now the second question, and we've been talking about digital infrastructure, behind everything that you do in a smart nation, and that is using technology, you need to have a robust digital infrastructure. It starts with connectivity, and these days it's broadband connectivity. You have a phone, you need to have robust, reliable, affordable internet, right? That's the basis of everything. Companies will move from being a finance company to a fintech, agriculture to agri-tech, and so on. So tech is not necessarily a sector anymore. It is a cross-sector enabler. This is the foundation, this is the electricity. You can call it many different things, different examples, but this is literally at the basis of everything that is going to build our country. Now, more specifically about 5G and spectrum, and on various occasions I've spoken about us being a spectrum-starved country. The quality of internet, which again is the foundation layer, is weak in Pakistan. And the reason why it is weak is that we don't have enough spectrum. So collectively, as a country, we have about 274 megahertz of spectrum, which is about 1/4 on a per individual basis compared to a country like Japan. So you just can't provide better services. There's just laws of physics that I can't undo with more investment. It's like you have a highway and there are more cars on that highway, they can't go very fast no matter what I do. Now you have to increase the width of that highway. This is what we've been asking for the government. And finally, like we have a spectrum auction coming up, which is in a month's time or so. I think we are now hoping to release another 600 megahertz, so that's almost twice as much as what the country has been given for the last 70 years. This is once in a decade kind of an opportunity, and I think with the right policy, and I've looked at the information memorandum, which is very progressive, very forward-leaning, I think the government, and I must give credit to them, have listened to our considerations, our feedback, and they have come up with a more progressive approach, which doesn't cash in on governmental receipts right at the beginning, but they see the benefit of what this digital infrastructure can do for every sector in this country. So it's taking a long-term approach. Now, more specifically about 5G and 4G, and these are also, things that sometimes vendors and telecom operators confuse customers with. What the customer wants is better internet. Yeah. They want the internet to work. Whether it has a 4G icon on the phone or 5G icon on the phone is some chest beating for telecom operators, right? What the customer wants is affordable, reliable, robust internet that works everywhere. So this is what the customer wants. The government sometimes wants upfront governmental value capture. This time, fortunately, they're taking a longer approach. So there's a lot of maturity in the way that they handle the spectrum. What the operators want is a viable business case. So I can't invest on infrastructure if there are no customers. That's where the problem with 5G comes in. Today, less than 2% of our customers in Pakistan have 5G handsets. So if I deploy a lot of 5G, which is very expensive, there is a super mismatch between what I'm going to invest and put into infrastructure compared to how the customers are going to be able to utilize. And then we don't want to be guilty of creating a network that once again appeals only to the elite. Now, who will have a 5G handset? It will be people like yourself and people sitting in this room. The students won't be able to do that because a 5G handset starts at 100,000 rupees. We're not importing enough. All the iPhones which are at 500, 600,000, they have. So the elite will be able to afford 5G, but the masses will not be. And this is what I've been pushing all along, that we need to, like many other countries, need to have an installment plan where, just like us asking the government that please, take money from me over an extended period of time that is commensurate with the benefits. The customers also want to pay for the handset over 24 months rather than 100,000 investment. And I think we are making some progress over there. Unlike many other places in the world, you would see that in Pakistan, operators don't sell handsets. There are no tariffs. Nobody else in the world actually goes and buys a $1,500 handset. They buy it over a period of 24 months. I'm very encouraged to see there's a lot of localized assembly over here. And I think once they see the demand, we have big brands being represented and assembled here in Pakistan. I see Taba Saab over here. His company has invested and doing a great job in building handsets. So I think we need to encourage that. We have a huge local demand, but at the right time, we will also start exporting that, which was the point that both Musaddiq Saab and Ahsan Saab were making. So that is something that will benefit. But wrapping up on 5G, I think our focus should be on providing better internet services to all. The information memorandum, which has just come out from the government, is very progressive. With few minor tweaks, I think we really have this once in a decade kind of an opportunity where we can significantly improve the speeds, the services of 4G, and we can accelerate the adoption towards 5G. And if some of the last few recommendations that I have are accepted, there is no reason why I don't see Pakistan being 100% 5G in 5 years, but it requires a few more tweaks.
Good. Mujib, you wanted to add something?
I wanted to add on the connectivity piece. Besides the consumer aspect of it, I think there's a business and commercial angle which is very sizable to it as well. If you look at what's happening in the region, and you compare connectivity in Pakistan, while we've come, I think, a long way over the last 5 to 10 years from an infrastructure standpoint when it comes to connectivity for businesses, there is regionally we still lack. So there is opportunity to invest in that space and make bandwidth, I think, at the right speeds, the right quality, and most importantly, the right cost. Commercial bandwidth today in Pakistan is still, if not the highest, one of the highest in the region, if not globally. And that's a deterrent for the technology sector, which is to date one of the fastest growing sectors, or from an exports perspective, CAGR of about 21, 22%. And to enable that, just like Amir mentioned, for consumers, businesses want to continue to rely on fast, high quality, cost-effective internet. So I think the opportunity in investing in that infrastructure for the businesses is also there.
I think both of you highlighted the very right point over here, especially when Amir highlighted about the right handsets to be available to get this overall technology utilized. You need to have the means and infrastructure that people and students can buy them. It's not only about the spectrum auction, it's about the end mile, how we can make that difference. And the second important thing, I think Pakistan gives the most cheapest internet all across the world. Let's be very honest. The kind of rates that we offer, and if you see whatever the rates that are offered in the developing and the developed countries, we don't acknowledge that one. We are ready to give Netflix 1,500 rupees per month. We are ready to give another 1,800 to Prime, and we are ready to give to Google. But we are not ready to give it to the internet, and we complain about it. I think the people sitting on this side of the table are trying to do a lot for the people, but we also need to realize to do our part and understand where we are standing in the global market as well. So I think very rightfully both the points were pointed out. Mujib, I'm coming to you, and I'm going to be putting a question about skill development. In every talk, everybody says we have 62% of the young population in Pakistan under the age of 30. We talk about we have a lot of labor. We talk about we have a services exports to do. But frankly speaking, how these people are getting skilled. We give the example of Vietnam, we give the example of Bangladesh, but what we are doing to make our people skillful today, both on the private sector and both on the public sector as well. Because if we are not doing it, we can keep on harping it, but we will not get the results.
Once again, I think this is a topic that gets spoken about at various platforms. We were having a conversation yesterday with a policy governance team that from Apple that was visiting, and they asked about skill availability as well, and talked about the fact that Pakistan, a lot of talent is finding global opportunities as well. So how do you balance those two things? I think you alluded to the fact that Pakistan has one of the largest under 25 soon to be employable population in the world. I think India and Indonesia are the other two countries that fall in that category. What we find from an employer standpoint, S&P Global has been operating in Pakistan for the last 20 years. We have roughly 16 to 1,700 people. We are consumers of that product at a large scale. And when we interact with other employers, systems, whether it is other large companies from the technology sector, even smaller ones, I'm sure it's similar to in the telecom space as well, demand is still higher than what we get supplied with. I'm not talking about the number of graduates that is coming out of universities. I'm talking about employability of those graduates day one. At S&P, we have open roles all the time where we can't find talent. We have to go look at other locations around the world. Same is the use case, I'm sure, at systems. I can name 5 other technology companies who share the same pain. What is happening? I think there are 2 challenges that have been spoken about a lot. I'll just quickly mention them and maybe talk a little bit about some solutions that have been deployed. Maybe we need to scale them a little bit. The 2 problems are academia continues to be, we were spending time yesterday with some top-tiered universities, both local and global, and we shared the same example with them. Academia is not able to respond to the rapid speed of advancement in technology and skills associated with that, which results in a significant gap when young people graduate and come out. They're not able to sort of compete with talent that is perhaps available globally as well. Some of this challenge is not limited to Pakistan. I will also qualify it by saying that, but it seems to be more pronounced in Pakistan. The second challenge is, Amir spoke about this, every one of us has this ability to now learn new skills using the devices that are available to us. This mindset of self-learning is what we also perhaps need to more fundamentally focus on across the board, because we see young people not utilizing the tools that are available to them, skill development opportunities, learning opportunities that are available to them. There is a role that organizations can play. I can share our example. We work with universities and other institutions to run programs with people who are about to graduate that give them an opportunity to bring their skill set current to what current industry demand is. And those programs have proven to be extremely successful with we finding talent that meets the needs that an organization like ours have. Ours is also, I mean, we're doing it for the community, but we're doing it for very selfish reasons. We are the only large information services provider in the country. We're very fortunate that we've had a couple of others start their operations in Pakistan recently as well. But still, we're the largest. So in our space, we have to find and build that skill set, and that's why we do this. But it serves a broader use case because those skills can be utilized by multiple entities and companies. I'm looking at the time as well. I'll very quickly, an intervention from the government that proved to be very, very successful was this boot camp that was done for 4,000 people last year. It was an industry and government partnership. The training programs were industry-led. Fantastic initiative. And if we can scale that, that's how, we're not the only ones facing the problem. We're not the only ones solving for it. That's how other countries in the region have solved for this problem. We need to scale that program to give our people the skills that makes them employable quickly. The demand is there. The demand is there locally. Demand is there globally. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to serve it.
Thank you very much, Mujib. And you rightfully pointed out very important point, academia. Students that are coming out, are they ready for the job that is required by the industry? And let me be very honest, there is a gap in this one, a big gap. We all are talking about the end miles, but this gap, especially about the skillful resources that we are talking about, if I see it, it's not being right now taken care the way that all the other topics are taken care. So I think this is one very important aspect over here. We are almost on the time. I will have one out of the course question that I will ask. Zarar is not there, so I have to put that question to you guys one by one. Amir, 1 minute only on that one. If you are being put in the position of Prime Minister today, what 2 changes that you will make today to make sure that the industry is able to get the results that you want to see? Changes.
Why do you want me to get fired? We were invited by the Prime Minister a few weeks ago, different CEOs and owners of businesses. We've already alluded to it. I think I would double down on the focus on execution. We are over-glamorizing strategy and over-analyzing what happened, what needs to happen, etc., etc. We just need to get down to doing it. Okay. So I will do only one thing, which is, and I will set a mantra, execute or be executed.
I think you put it the best way. Execute and be executed.
That can't be, you can't top up that. I would just say, number one, absolutely execution. We have brilliant plans from, you name the top consulting organizations in the world. We have a export priority sector plan from IFC. We have plans from McKinsey. We have plans from PwC. Everybody and their grandmother has given us a recovery and strategy plan. It's great, as Amir alluded to as well. We are executing in a lot of areas. Let's increase the pace of that execution. And the second thing I would say, technology is an equalizer. We have a humongous opportunity, and it has to be led from the front, has to be a strategic area of focus for us. I know we have 7, maybe we should have 3, technology being one of them. And there is so much funding and investment and opportunity available globally that other countries in our region, like Malaysia, our neighbors to the east, are utilizing. There's enough of the pie for everybody to have. No reason why we shouldn't take some of it as well.
Thank you very much, Mujib. I think you didn't execute it within the time, so you need to get executed for that one. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I think the talk was clear. It's all about what each of us has to play our role on this one. Government has their own role, private sector has their own role, and the people who are sitting in this room and the people whom we are representing as a company, as an individual, and as the masses as well. I think we need to adopt to these changes. I think if I have to get 2 or 3 important points out, I will just say the point that Mujib also highlighted about self-awareness, self-correction, and self-learning. Sometimes with the white hair, we think we know everything. No, we don't know everything. We need to learn, relearn, and learn again. Please make sure that in every age we get this mantra right. And the point that Amir highlighted about, either in every role that the people are sitting in this room, execute the plan. Don't overthink now the policy and the strategy. Because if we are not doing it, we will just be at the same place where we are today. Thank you very much.
I would like Mr. Mohammed Ali Tabba, CEO, Lucky Cement, to please join us on stage to distribute the souvenirs. Asfar, if you could come up on stage as well, joined by Mr. Yunus Daga for the ceremony. Can we have a round of applause for our esteemed panelists? Thank you so much. will swiftly be moving on to our next session, which is a dialogue on green growth pathways for a climate vulnerable Pakistan.
Water scarcity, food insecurity, and environmental degradation are no longer future risks. They are realities we face today. Pakistan's per capita water availability has fallen from 5,600 cubic meters in 1947 to just 930.
The Climate Change and Food Security Planning Commission of Pakistan, Dr. Samuel Risk, Resident Representative Pakistan United Nations Development Program, Maheen Rahman, Chief Executive Officer, Infrazam in Pakistan, and Ayla Majid, Founder and CEO, Plaintiff, and our moderator, Sajid Aslam, Partner and Co-Founder, Spectaco LLC. Please join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a warm welcome with an applause.
Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. I think climate, for a while we are talking about climate and the vulnerability. Today we are going to talk about more around what we can do about it. The one thing which I always love about when we start a dialogue, my experience and a past experience, dialogues always link or lead towards some shared vision, and that shared vision create partnerships, and those partnerships bring execution. I'm sure during that conversation and after that conversation, people would like to talk to each other, but definitely I'll encourage, create small partnership and see what you can do, what you can contribute there. So we have got a very esteemed panel right now. I'm one of a blessed one who have got a quite good gender balance, or a little bit gender biased as well. And luckily, all three women who are sitting here are from LUMS and they are close friends as well, and which we just figured out right now when they joined this panel here. So I'll start with you, Nadia. There's a very uphill task. We are talking about $348 billion, which we need to really raise by 2030 to meet our targets right now. So how the government is working towards that, what frameworks you are creating, and how you are creating a climate resilience budgets which can help you to really deliver on that projects as well.
Thank you, Sajid. So $348 billion is only for adaptation from now until 2030. We also have to work on mitigation. And the reason I say we have to work on mitigation is because mitigation is what is going to bring in the newer technologies which will green and decarbonize our industry and make us remain relevant in international value chains. So for adaptation, we need $348 billion, and for decarbonization, we need to unlock more finance. And in terms of public financial management and the public sector development portfolio that you're talking about, this year it was 1 trillion rupees. So it's about 5% of the budget. So within that, it's very clear that the government cannot do it alone. Public funds cannot do it alone. We have to move towards blending, and we have to move towards private capital mobilization. And the government is very clear about it, and we have developed several solutions and have piloted them. So there is a blended finance framework under which the government is looking at credit enhancements, green bonds. We've had inaugural sukuk, a green sukuk, and now we are going towards a green bond launch of the Panda bond with credit enhancements from from Asian Infrastructure Bank and the Asian Development Bank. So green bonds, guarantees, and then a public-private partnership, carbon finance, and debt for nature swap. So these two instruments, carbon finance and debt for nature swap, are non-debt instruments. They won't, and the others, the goal is to bring in the private sector, bring in efficiencies, and another aspect of bringing in private sector is that it introduces rigor into the climate investments or public investments that are climate resilient, because you are answerable to investors from the private sector. So that strengthens the monitoring and evaluation and implementation framework of the government, which is an Achilles heel. We approve a lot of projects, they do not achieve outcomes. So by blending, we'll be able to not only introduce efficiencies, lower our cost of financing through concessional climate loans, and also improve our governance and implementation infrastructure. So that is as far as blended finance at the Planning Commission is concerned. And then for carbon finance is very catalytic, and because it is for carbon finance it can bring in technology. It can bring in cleaner technology which will help decarbonize our industry and agriculture processes, which is extremely important if we are to retain our exports, because international value chains are transforming. And for us to remain relevant, we have to look at carbon finance, climate finance, and other and these instruments as catalytic instruments for our industry, in addition to adaptation. I'll talk more about adaptation in the next. And then finally, I wanted very briefly to talk about the disaster risk finance strategy. So disaster risk finance is extremely important because government has been locked in a cycle of disaster and then recovery, disaster and recovery. We do not invest in preparing upfront. So now we've taken a layered approach on how to do a disaster risk financing. So the first layer is your contingent, your reserve. The government has ring-fenced some funds which are in the event of a disaster. The Ministry of Finance will release those. And then we are going into contingent credit, where we have set up the Climate Risk Fund to enable microfinance funds and facilities throughout the country to pump money into the financial sector, the microfinance sector, for contingent credit in the event of a disaster. And then through solidarity, and these are risk retention instruments, and then we are also going into risk transfer instruments, market-based instruments, where we are going to be the Solidarity Fund is being set up, which is going to work with insurance companies for disaster risk insurance. So, and yeah.
Nadia, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It will lead to another question. I'll come back to that. How the federal government, the climate ministry, planning ministry, finance ministry, NDMA, NDRMF, and the provincial ministry, how they are working together to really leverage on something which you are building right now, and how much private sector can contribute or become a part of that. So I think that's a great opportunity for us to really see what we can get from the private sector and how we can engage them and how the coordination is happening on a different level. One question which leads to, from Nadia one, it's for NDC 3.0, when we are looking at that, it has got a very ambitious targets. And there's a lot of technical support which is required. Climate, regardless how vulnerable we are, it's still a very new and evolving space where people do not understand what to focus, where to focus, how to really create a data-based or data evidence impact calculations, and how to really incorporate, even in these financial instruments, what are the covenants which need to go in specifically from a performance perspective. UNDP has a great experience and exposure globally. So how UNDP is playing its role in terms of the technical support and the financial support to really look at the NDC 3.0 and its targets, and the targets which are quite ambitious, I would say.
So thanks very much. Happy to be here. I don't know if anyone remembers, but I think Ayla was on the panel last dialogue. In April, I think we walked in at 3:30 in the afternoon. We walked out at 5, and the big hailstorm had already damaged quite a lot. So I'm hoping the next 26 minutes nothing happens outside of the session. Okay, NDC 3.0. So NDC in general, the nationally determined contributions are as much a policy and planning set of documents, globally, Pakistan included, as they are a commitment document. What is Pakistan prepared to commit to in terms of mitigation and adaptation? What is Pakistan prepared to commit to in terms of mitigation and adaptation? And what is the global commitment toward Pakistan? And I would say, point number one, there is a legitimate grievance on the part of Pakistan that is mentioned regularly, that we often commit here and we don't receive any commitments back. So, if everyone's asking Pakistan to be ambitious, reduce 50% greenhouse gases by 2035, so 10 more years, then what is the global commitment back? And I think that is where the challenge becomes. If we know that Pakistan is very vulnerable, will continue to be, if we know every 2 or 3 years there will be mega disasters that will take place, the 2022 flood, the 2025 flood, what is the global commitment on the mitigation side to help deal with some of the issues that happen outside of Pakistan but impact Pakistan? And secondly, obviously, what is the financial commitment? If a country that is in some cases under significant debt, along with a handful of others, but is now managing better because the recovery and stabilization is actually going well, what is the role of the private sector, international organizations, the banks, etc.? I think that'll be important. What does the NDC 3.0 document say? The commitment between now and 2035 requires over $550 billion. Slight majority of that is mitigation, less adaptation. I'm glad Nadia will talk about adaptation. Happy to. But what is required is the accompanying that you mentioned. All of the system basically supporting the government for a few things that are important. One is the policy commitments. So everything related to what do we do about EVs, data, connectivity and coordination on disaster risk management from NDMA to PDMA to district level disaster management. That is preparing in advance. Secondly, how to accelerate recovery. I mean, everybody knows that we are still working on recovery efforts from the 2022 floods, and the 2025 flood added to that. Yes, there are qualitative differences, but I honestly think that the lessons from the 2022 flood were already learned for 2025, important for the NDC discussions. The 2022 flood, for example, was Subsequently, everybody came together to talk about a humanitarian response plan, flood recovery plan, post-disaster needs assessment, 4RF, the recovery framework, and a pledging conference that took place in Geneva, and then a follow-up mechanism to address the $30 billion of loss and damage. The 2025 flood, I mean, really none of that actually took place, but I honestly feel that the national authorities, the government, learned an important lesson from the response of 2022 flood, which is a governance lesson. What are the governance lessons learned? And I think these relate more to disaster risk reduction, water management, accountability, etc., for the future. There was no pledging conference. We're working on a post-disaster needs assessment that looks more like a lessons learned exercise. The initial support and continuing support in terms of finances came from federal and provincial governments. And I think that is important to learn. So, just to say that some of the differences between NDC commitments 2.0 and 3.0 have already been learned. And I think for UNDP and the whole UN system, the commitment to accompany federal and provincial, to support with data and policy planning, and then good solid programming is really quite important. I would just say one last thing here. You know, a lot of people look at response programming to mega disasters or to climate change, and the one immediate thing is, but this is all little petty stuff. $1 million here, $2 million here, and we're talking about $30 billion worth of damage. What is important is that all of these things are coordinated and fit together into what the government or nationally, what Pakistan wants to do. That's when all of these things start to make sense. Some of it is policy, some is programming, some of it is big money, some is little money. Some of it is housing, some agriculture, some infrastructure, some transport, some livelihoods, a focus on particularly affected communities, women, etc. The most vulnerable are the ones that get hit. And I think that's when all of this starts to make sense. And glad to see that when the Prime Minister launched the NDC 3.0 in September in New York, as part of the global commitment, all of these things actually come through. And I think now the follow-through is what's important.
No, thank you very much. I think the one key area is the ecosystem approach. We cannot do things in isolation, number one, and then the ecosystem partners there. One thing which we need to recognize, regardless how much we love to have a grant money for that, it's not there. Right now, money is it's a low-cost one, it's a blended finance one, it's available, and like Nadia raised that concern, in an international value chain, if your business in Pakistan, specifically if it's engaged in import or export, both sides now, if you are unable to showcase or share your plans around how you are going to reduce your carbon footprint or environment footprint, you will be cut off from that supply chain. So your share in a global trade is going to be impacted. And that's where a lot of transition plans we are seeing different businesses are building up. And Maheen, that's bring me back to you as one of a financial institution. You could be, or you are right now, is a great distribution channel to really bring that blended finance, concessional finance and the guarantees together and help the businesses to fund their transition plans, which are now inevitable if they are particularly in export, and in a 2 years' time, even if they are in an import business. So that's going to impact their growth as well as even it become an existence challenge.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum everybody. It's great to be here. Asfar, thanks for having me here again. So I actually think Pakistan has done very well on the mitigation side of climate. And that's in terms of reducing carbon footprint and reducing our greenhouse gas exposure. In the last 2 years, we've had a solar revolution in Pakistan, where today 25% of the grid is supplied by solar energy. There's only 17 countries in the world that can actually claim that, and we are the only frontier market in that group of countries. So I think that revolution which we've seen has actually been organic. It's been consumer-driven, it's been investment-driven, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. So very quickly we are moving into the generation capacity that we require in terms of renewable solar and wind. Now, having said that, I do believe that financing of climate projects is still somewhat challenging. What is interesting to see, and InfraZamin has now been around 5 years, and we work very heavily on the climate finance side. What's interesting to see, if you look at our shareholder, which is the PIJ group, about 60% of the global portfolio of about $5 billion or so is invested in renewable energy projects across South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa. But specifically in Pakistan today, 60% of our existing InfraZamin portfolio is actually invested in the high growth areas for Pakistan of digital and telecommunication infrastructure. Which is very interesting because the areas that Pakistan is seeing in terms of actual growth where financing is not flowing through easily, those are the sectors that, where the credit enhancement, where the guarantee, where the blended finance are actually needed. So we have seen a lot of movement towards telecom solarization, telco tower solarization. Ayla sitting here, and I don't want to steal thunder from her project, but I'm sure she'll talk about it. And we've assisted them on telco solarization in a very interesting way. I think also on the digital side, whether it is looking at manufacturing of digital components or whether it is looking at fiberization of smaller cities in Pakistan, we have been involved quite heavily in a lot of those spaces. Now, obviously, the biggest impact of climate is in a very crucial sector for Pakistan, and that's agriculture. And I think that's where now the next 5 years have to focus on. The agricultural supply chains, the agricultural storage abilities, the ability of the agri sector to actually withstand climate impacts. And that's the adaptation bit, which you are hearing Nadia talk about, as well as Samuel. So the adaptation piece is what we really need. We need to have storage solutions for agri. We need to have irrigation systems that can store water when we have the flooding. With Pakistan's, it's not just 22. Pakistan's actually had a major flood for the last 10 years every time in the monsoon. It's just that sometimes it's a super flood, but in reality, we lose almost 10 years of water every year because of flooding. And if we were able to focus on the adaptation side of irrigation and dams, etc., that is something that would greatly change the equation for the agri space as well as for Pakistan's water security as a whole as well. So, at InfraZamin, we look to support the sectors which are not receiving the financing that they should. Pakistan's bond market is still underdeveloped. There are maybe 3 to 5 issuances of corporate sector bonds a year. At least 1 to 2 of those will be InfraZamin guaranteed bonds. So you can see that there is still a lot of room for that to happen. I think finally I'll close out by simply saying that we are talking about billions and billions of dollars that we need to come through on climate finance and for Pakistan. Naturally, some of those will come from multilateral assistance. But I think what's very crucial is that the domestic investment cycle needs to kickstart in that area. It's already happened in terms of the solar side, and I think if we create the right blended risk mitigation type of structures, it can happen on the other sides as well. Because I think with the solar side, what we saw was that if we provide the incentive, then the consumer and the business will take that and scale it themselves. And I think ultimately that's what it's about. So whether it comes through a credit guarantee or some other forms of blended finance, creating the right incentive framework for the private sector and for the consumer to really take on that adaptation element on their own, I think that's going to really scale the financing available, particularly from within the country rather than constantly looking from without.
Thank you, Mahin. I think you are strengthening that ecosystem component there, but adding the incentive for every ecosystem player so they can make money. And one thing I think we have to understand, climate is not a government issue, right? So it's not only something which we expect the government to do. I think the government has created certain policies and the framework where the private sector really can capture that, and particularly textile exports to EU is something with the CBAM and the international laws changing starting this January. It's becoming very difficult if you are unable or to show your plan and how you are going to make the progress around it, and that's require a lot of credible data there. So now I'll bring it to Ayla on two questions. Number one, the data, the credible data, even from screening of the project and even delivering and evaluating the impact of that project, whether it's in line with the blended finance or a climate finance or concessional finance covenant, that's one thing. But the other part, I think, where you are doing very well is the hard-to-abate industries where the energy consumption is very, very high, like you picked up from a telecom side. But if you look at the cement, the fertilizers, manufacturing, even the large shipping, airlines and all that. So these are the ones who are going through a certain transition, and these are important to go through that energy transition as such. So how you see that data coming up, number one, and how you see the energy ecosystem evolving for Pakistan and in the region?
Thank you so much, Sajid. So first of all, thank you for the organizers, Asfar, Yunus Daga Sahab, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and joined by my esteemed panelists. Sajid, the way I look at the whole ecosystem, and I think we are, of course, impacted by a lot what has gone in our past. We need to sort of look at that data sets first. Then we need to look at that, what's happening globally. And I think in the whole scheme of things, we must observe and we must have a conscious sort of analysis on what is that we need to preserve, what is that we need to leave behind, and what is that we need to adopt moving forward in terms of how the global development is happening, how our local needs are. Looking at all the sectors, whether it is industry, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is agriculture, all of that. Data is absolutely integral in order to sort of make refined and good decisions. And I think with the availability of data now, tech is something that we cannot do without. We need to look at that, how tech will enable us to create more productivity, more growth, and also close the equation where resources are needed, where funding is needed. For all of that, data is absolutely crucial. When we look at the global growth and also the growth of our own country, the numbers that are needed for investment are huge. BlackRock has projected that the global investment needed for infrastructure development, and energy is a huge part of that, that number is $68 trillion. $21 trillion is needed in energy, and a huge part of that is because of AI. Now, it's kind of sort of like, kind of opposing sort of challenges there. AI requires more energy. AI is needed for more growth, but at the same time, it's a huge consumer of energy. The global thinking now has moved towards more on carbon intensity. And yes, while we need to be absolutely mindful of climate change, how it impacts us, we must not fall into traps, or we must not fall into frameworks which hamper our growth. So having the right kind of balance is extremely important. Now, in terms of how all of this investment will be funded, the capital markets, unfortunately, are not enough. The commercial finance, the banking sector doesn't have that kind of depth. But interestingly enough, technology has brought us now newer tools, tokenization, bringing assets through digital means in order to democratize investing. And I think we need to create more of these frameworks and strengthen more of these tools, how to bring all of that. Since you asked me about energy, I just want to share one of the examples that Maheen referred to. So one of our companies, we invest in energy infrastructure for the telecom sector. And just by investing investing solar batteries, but also augmented by the right kind of data and the right kind of planning, we are able to save millions of dollars from the cost side for the telcos. Not only that, but these investments, we are talking about, say, a 3 to 4 billion of the right kind of investment can lead into bringing down emissions of that you are hundreds of thousands of trees worth of emission, worth of mitigation that you can plan for. We have great examples all over. Whatever we do, we need to think through the whole equation and see that how it impacts every stakeholder and how it's yielding growth, profitability, and the best return for investment. And by best return of an investment, I mean all stakeholders, of course the sponsors, but the consumers and everybody involved.
Thank you, Ayla. And I think I'll agree with that. The one of a conversation where we are sitting, there's too much money available, but they are not credible project pipeline which is backed by the right kind of data, and technically we call it the MRV, the measuring, reporting, and verification system, to support that project as a eligible project for the either climate resilience, adaptation, or mitigation categories. Luckily, by the way, Pakistan has got the green taxonomy now, which has helped classification of the projects. So, and then SECP also came up with the reporting side. So we are seeing a lot of data which is credible and available. Even the recent mapping of the budget and SDG, we are also anticipating and expecting that there is a more visibility around it, and we will see how it's moving forward. We can take two questions if you can prepare we can take two questions. If you can have a very precise question, I'll come back to you. But before that, I'll just take a final comment from Nadia around how the coordination is happening between the Planning Commission, Climate Ministry, Finance Ministry at a federal level, and NDMA, NDRMF, and then how the provincial governments are engaged and involved in that. And how you are using a screening criteria for the projects as well. Very quickly.
All right, so about climate governance. One is that we require digital governance, so integration of the data. And I think there are two aspects. One is climate finance governance, and the other is preparation and planning governance aspect of it. So for climate finance, the roles are very clear. Ministry of Climate Change is responsible for carbon markets. EAD is responsible for debt for nature swaps. Ministry of Finance does sovereign issuances of loans, of bonds and guarantees. And these are the main instruments. Then there are public-private partnership authorities. So the roles are very clearly defined. The synergies have to be developed in terms of maintaining an asset register, which is the right kind of projects. And who maintains that? So that's done at the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission, the way the machine, I see it as a railroad infrastructure in the country. So you have trains running, and the railroad infrastructure is from colonial times. So the way projects come to planning commissions and all PNDs, it's all demand driven. They come from local governments, they come from municipal levels, they're all demand driven, but they are not investment ready. So that reorientation to make them investment ready, to identify the viability gaps, and to customize them for carbon finance, green climate funds, that is the role of the Commission, and that is what we are doing in coordination with our with the remaining ministries to make the projects investment ready.
Sorry.
And for that, we have developed the taxonomy, so the arrangements, right? So you're talking about the framework.
Question is, can private sector become a part of that register? Can they come back and say that these are our projects like 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐬𝐬 of the world and large energy sector, oil and gas?
Absolutely. Okay. So the shift towards blended finance is the first guideline of that is it's a delineation of what is purely public good, what is public-private, and what is completely private. Yeah. So the government should try to do lesser of what it tries to do everything. And then we also crowd out private investment. Maheen mentioned that a lot of funding would come from MDBs, but can we use those grants and those guarantees to crowd in private investment? So that is the role that the government can do, because the international organizations like World Bank and the bilaterals, they work directly with the government. The government can bring in that de-risking funds and guarantees, and then crowd in private investment from the sector. And there is a large set of projects that are available. They are demand driven, but they have to be oriented as per the requirement of each instrument that we're trying to tap into.
Great, thank you. So, do we have a question? Yeah. Can we bring a mic here? Very quickly. Very.
Okay, how you see the climate action drive in anti-climate Trump world? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, you have to explain that. Climate action drive?
In anti-climate Trump world.
Okay. Anti-climate Trump world. So that's one question. Second question we have? Can we get a question from there? Yeah, please. Sorry guys, we can have during the networking session and lunch, we can have more questions there. But right now we are just running out of time. Can we have a mic there, guys?
Assalamu alaikum, sir. My name is Asim, and my question is regarding the green energy and climate change. Actually, we are seeing that the government of Pakistan, the Ministry of Climate Change is
it's a very brief question.
Working very slowly to promote the green energy. Like all over the world, we are seeing that the automobile industry is converting towards electric, and 90% of the developed market is now on electric. In Pakistan, it will go like with this speed, it will go up to 90.
Your question is
the government is not like working.
The government is not working fast enough for the adoption of green energy.
Even at the policy level, same with the solar energy. Like government is now discouraging people to install the solar, because if someone is creating more energy with the solar, they are not giving the same benefit to the people. So like instead of encouraging, government is discouraging all these things.
So, thank you very much. So I think there is a certain policy level question. Anybody wants to pick up the first question, how you see the climate action in an anti-climate Trump world? Please go ahead.
I have to be very careful what I say here, but I just have to say that the pushback against climate didn't start a year ago, and certainly didn't start 4 years ago. There's always been this idea of, energy companies pushing back, etc., the use of fossil fuels, all of this stuff. So I would say for Pakistan, there are a couple of important things. One is diversify, and second is to reduce dependence. And I think that's important, because diversifying is actually part of Pakistan's commitment away from oil and more solarization, electric vehicles. All of that is part of the NDC commitment. Secondly, reducing greenhouse gases, doing something different with agricultural waste, doing something about methane, etc. All of these things I think are already important. So the best way to preserve and secure Pakistan's energy is to figure out how to diversify and reduce independence. Secondly, I think figure out what is a good balance in blended finance. What does blending actually mean? I think blending for Pakistan is funding, financing, investment, and insurance. Funding is Pakistan as a developing country still 168 on the Human Development Index, still can get funding because of the poverty levels that exist, whether it's 40% or 25% or anywhere in between. Financing, better concessional loans, because macroeconomically stabilizing is an important opportunity and using them well. There's a lot of money here from the World Bank and the IMF and others. The financing part, the loans part is important. Investment is the role of the private sector. I honestly see that the private sector here has actually figured out a way to do well and do good at the same time. The only question is not big companies now, but small and medium-sized enterprises. Where do they get money? Where do they support their creativity? And the last part is obviously risk insurance. It has to be that somebody needs to pay the premium for insurance for everyone that is super vulnerable in every sector, because the inevitability of climate change is clear.
Thank you, Sybil. You want to add something? Yeah, very quickly, very brief.
So in an anti-climate Trump world, we are going to see a cut in climate finance. OECD funding is going to be cut by 25% by 2027. So what do we have to do? We have to do more with less funding that is available for us. I'll give you just one example. One water supply project approved for Punjab was $400 million. We add $12 million onto it for water quality management so that it remains safe throughout the duration of the project, and we have operation and maintenance built into it. Then from the same project, we are going to get cleaner, safer water. So improving better, doing more with less, and bringing that quality and climate lens, that is going to that is how we have to respond.
Thank you, Nadia. I think it's a great point. And our time is up, and just concluding that your policy response, definitely we will pass on that message that how we can do it better. But just to close that one, so the one thing, there is a vulnerability, climate vulnerability, no doubt about it. But there is another opportunity for the businesses right now with the changes in the regulatory regime and the data, which Ayla also mentioned and Maheen also mentioned, the data, and like Nadia also mentioned, that how we can do more with less. So this is an opportunity to really upgrade the strategy as well as the technology and move towards the transition towards the better technology, cleaner technology. And for that, I think there is a lot of blended finance which is available. If you follow through the right taxonomy and try to access that money, that will help to bring that money to Pakistan. Government alone cannot bring it. Your transition plan will expedite the access to that finance, which is low cost, important, and definitely we can talk to the finance ministry how to cover the dollar risk or foreign exchange risk. That's one of our responsibility there, the de-risking strategy which is available. So there's an ecosystem, there's a policy, there's a framework, there are taxonomies which are available. Now as a business, we have to see how do we want to stay in that vulnerability, or we want to leverage that, access the funding, and move towards a neater, cleaner, better future. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, our panelists as well. A big round of applause for them. Thank you.
I would like to request Mr. 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿𝐭 to please come up on stage for the acknowledgement ceremony. Can Mr. Asfar Ehsan and Mr. Yunus Daga join him on stage, please? So can we first have Nadia Rahman to please receive her souvenir? Followed by Dr. Samuel Risk. Can we have a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Ms. Maheen Rahman. I don't hear any claps. I think it was a great panel. We can give them warm applause. Ms. Ayla Majid. And last but not the least, Mr. Sajid Aslam. I request you all to please assemble for the group photo. Okay, moving swiftly into our next panel. Can I please request you all to be seated? A very interesting dialogue coming up on restoring competitiveness, fixing Pakistan's macroeconomic framework. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please request you to take your seat? We want to start the next panel. Can hall management please support? Please have a seat. Starting with Mr. Khurram Shehzad, Advisor to Finance Minister, Mr. Ehsan Zafar Syed, President Engro Corporation, Huma Fakhr, Founder MAS Capital and MAP Group, Mohammad Javed Bilwani, Chairman JB Industries and former KCCI President, Dr. Khakan Hassan Najib, Economist, former Advisor, Ministry of Finance, and of course, our moderator for the session, Asad Hamid Khan, Country Head, Pakistan ACCA. Let's have a round of applause for this panel. And over to you, Asad.
So thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum everyone, good afternoon. So I can see a few people standing. So ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin. It will be great to have your ears and eyes towards us. So thank you. I'd like to start by thanking the Policy Research and Advisory Council Nutshell and Corporate Pakistan Group for organizing yet another opportunity for dialogue where we all can share ideas, challenge each other, and possibly arrive at an outcome which creates the pathway in terms of actionable agendas. The session that we have today, given to me, given to this panel, is restoring competitiveness, fixing Pakistan's macroeconomic framework. So we have heard a lot this morning from the ministers, we have heard from the business, we have heard around the idea of how Pakistan is moving in terms of its economic transformation, the structural reforms, the impact that businesses have been create around the digital divide, or let's call it digital connectivity, leveraging that for the benefit of the economy. And last but not the least, the green growth pathways. All that we have heard point towards one direction, and that is growth is inevitable, growth is necessary, and there is no disagreement on that. If we look at the statistics that have been displayed with us, but one statistic that continues to be highlighted in today's context is our exports to GDP ratio. So when we talk about competitiveness, what is competitiveness? So competitiveness in today's conversation, we'll try to highlight that what would it take Pakistan in terms of its cost to produce, where the international buyers or the world is willing to pay for that cost. And we have to keep that in the context of a changed world which is marred by trade wars, which is marred by global conflicts, where AI and technology is a multiplier, where sustainability is going to be that key and that passport to access globally. Last but not the least, the focus, I think, for all the panelists would be that at the end of today's dialogue, if we are able to take just 3 key takeaways that we can immediately present as to the businesses, to the policymakers, and the people that will help take that suggestion forward just in 2026. So we're not looking for a long-term solution. We are looking for 3 takeaways within 2026. Look, this gets done, and this is where how it lifts competitiveness, how it lifts exports, how it lifts in our poverty, how it contributes to our productivity, our fiscal, I would say, imbalance, our balance of payments, etc. Our distinguished panelists today, they've already been introduced. So we are represented through 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿, macroeconomic policy, 𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 Zafar Syed, representing large industry competitiveness, Huma Fakhr on trade strategy, Javed Bilwani on exporter realities, and Dr. 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿 on policy, architecture and reform. So starting with 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿, we've heard a lot today in terms of what the government is doing in terms of ensuring that the economy is on track to deliver the results, which creates more, I would say, economic buffers where we are able to implement our economic strategy. So in your views, what are the 3 actions that have already taken place that, in your view, have helped lift the competitiveness and created that predictability for all the stakeholders?
First of all, thank you very much. Thank you very much all the organizers, Dhaga Saab, Asfar, for setting this very effective, very productive discussion platform today. और खास करके इनकी teams को बड़ा credit जाता है, and it's purely research driven. That's the key takeaway for the day. Mr. Saab ने भी ये सुबह कहा था कि it has to be facts driven. Criticism is one thing. Everything has to be facts driven. So coming back to the dialogue का जो आपने actually जो topic रखा है, that's competitiveness. It's a very broad word. Competitiveness includes anything and everything related to economy. It includes physical infrastructure, human capital, human infrastructure, digital infrastructure. It includes trade liberalization, currency liberalization, plus tariff reforms, structural reforms, fiscal side reforms. It includes everything. So I'll try and keep it very specific to what we are doing at the Ministry of Finance as a part of the economic team. So first of all, I would like to share with the audience, with you, that what we have done in the last budget in order to start with this word competitiveness. सबसे पहली चीज़ ये है कि हमने इकोनॉमी को खोलना शुरू किया है. That comes under the tariff reform policy. If you review that policy, what we have done is we have actually phased tariff reform into the next 5 years. First year, we have tried to reduce 20% of the 100% of the duties, which include regulatory duties, which include custom duties, which includes additional custom duties. So हमने शुरुआत ये की है कि आप ट्रेड को जब लिबरलाइज कर रहे हैं, देखिए होता क्या है. Just I'll give you a very brief background of what we have done in the last 30 years, 40 years. हमने जब भी हम कंजम्पशन लेड ग्रोथ पे गए हैं, उसके बाद हम IMF के पास गए और हमने किया ये एज अ रिजल्ट कि हमने ड्यूटीज़ को बढ़ाया इम्पोर्ट्स पे कि जी इम्पोर्ट्स को कंप्रेस कर दें, एंड दैट इज़ द पेनेसिया यू हैव. यही बस इसका हल है कि जी आप ड्यूटीज़ को जो है वो बढ़ा दें, इम्पोर्ट्स को रोक लें. एंड एज अ रिजल्ट हमने ये रियलाइज़ ही नहीं किया कि हमने प्रोटेक्शनिज्म को जो है वो बढ़ाते गए हम. इस बजट में हमने टैरिफ रिफॉर्म्स की तरफ एक कदम बढ़ाया है और ये मैंने बताया कि शुरू में हमने ड्यूटीज़ थोड़ा कम करना शुरू किए हैं. आई थिंक दिस इज़ द ईस्ट एशिया मूवमेंट, वट यू कॉल इट, जो सुबह फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने भी कहा कि ईस्ट एशिया मूवमेंट क्या है. एक्चुअली इफ़ यू गो बैक टू 90s, 4 कंट्रीज़ ने या 5 कंट्रीज़ कर लें आप, सिंगापुर, साउथ कोरिया, जापान, हांगकांग और ताइवान, इन्होंने क्या किया, इनके पास भी स्टेबलाइजेशन के इश्यूज़ थे काफ़ी. जापान को अगर आप हटा दें, 4 कंट्रीज़ को ले लें, ये इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमीज थी उस वक्त. इन्होंने डेवलपिंग से डेवलप्ड का सफ़र जो है वो शुरू किया विद पॉलिसी रिफॉर्म्स, स्ट्रक्चरल रिफॉर्म्स टुवर्ड्स इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन एंड एक्सपोर्ट लेड ग्रोथ. उनके भी हालात इतने अच्छे नहीं थे उस वक्त, एनर्जी के भी इश्यूज़ थे, टैक्सेशन के इश्यूज़ थे, लेकिन उन्होंने अपनी इकोनॉमीज खोली. एंड फॉर दैट मैटर इंडिया इज़ ऑल्सो वन ऑफ दोज 4-5 कंट्रीज़ जिसने अर्ली 90s में, आपको पता है, वो एक रिफॉर्म का प्रोसेस शुरू किया. सो वी हैव स्टार्टेड दिस ऑफ फ्रॉम दिस ईयर. और आप आगे जाते हुए देखेंगे, अच्छा इसमें एक आर्गूमेंट ये आता है, हमारे सारे कॉर्पोरेट के बड़े बिजनेसेस बैठे हैं यहाँ पे, उनका एक आर्गूमेंट ये है कि जी आपका जो इन्वायरमेंट है वो कॉस्ट ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस इज़ वेरी हाई, विच इज़ अ फेयर आर्गूमेंट. ये बड़ी मुनासिब बात है. टैक्सेशन इज़ हाई, वन ऑफ द हाइस्ट इन द रीजन. एनर्जी कॉस्ट इज़ वन ऑफ द हाइस्ट इनफैक्ट द हाइस्ट इन द रीजन. और जो थर्ड बड़ा फैक्टर होता है वो आपका होता है इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट. इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट हैज़ कम डाउन पॉजिटिवली. उसने थोड़ा सा सपोर्ट करना शुरू किया है बिजनेसेस को. बट व्हाट वी आर नाउ वर्किंग ऑन फॉर दिस बजट इज़ 2 की थिंग्स, एनर्जी कॉस्ट एंड टैक्सेशन. हमारा काम तो देखिए टैक्सेशन से ज़्यादा रिलेवेंट है. तो ये 2 चीज़ों पे आप इंशाल्लाह प्रोग्रेस देखेंगे फ्रॉम दिस बजट ऑनवर्ड्स. सो टैरिफ रिफॉर्म इज़ वन की एरिया दैट हैड टू बी डन इन वन वे और दी अदर. वो आज करते हैं, हम बाद में करते. आर्गूमेंट ये था जी $25 बिलियन के या $35 बिलियन के रिजर्व कर लें. दिस इज़ एक्चुअली चिकन एंड एग प्रॉब्लम कि आप टैरिफ रिफॉर्म्स उस वक्त करें जब आप स्टेबलाइज और बेहतर हो जाए और एक्सपोर्ट लेड ग्रोथ हो जाए, तो वो उस वक्त तो होगा नहीं ना. एक्चुअली टैरिफ रिफॉर्म करने से हमने एक शुरुआत की. ऑफ कोर्स उसके शॉर्ट टर्म पेन्स भी होंगे और नज़र आएंगे और उसमें प्रॉब्लम्स होंगी, बट इवेंचुअली यू हैव टू ओपन अप योर इकोनॉमी. यू हैव टू गेट अवे विद द प्रोटेक्शनिज्म. लेकिन ऑफ कोर्स वो हमें एक फेज मैनर में करना है और वो हम कर रहे हैं. बट उसमें इंडस्ट्री के प्रपोजल्स भी हैं, इनपुट्स भी हैं. सो दिस इज़ वन की एरिया दैट विल produce results in the long term in terms of competitiveness of the economy, real competitiveness of the economy. अच्छा, अब आपने कहा कि ये 3 चीज़ें कौन सी हैं. So I want to share with you the framework, the mid-term framework that we are working on. अगर आप वो एक स्लाइड लगा दें तो मैं उसको एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ कि वो 3 चीज़ें क्या हैं जिसके अराउंड हम काम कर रहे हैं, जो कि एक्चुअली इंश्योर करेंगे इंशाल्लाह सस्टेनेबिलिटी. सो On the left-hand side, there are structural reforms, 9-10 structural reforms that we have already undertaken. On the right-hand side is key policy, clarity, direction. ये important है, policy देना important है. And the third one is access to finance. So ये 3 areas हैं जो आप असद पूछ रहे थे कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं या क्या करना चाहिए हमें. तो स्ट्रक्चरल रिफॉर्म्स में आप देखें टैक्सेशन रिफॉर्म्स हैं, एनर्जी रिफॉर्म्स हैं, प्राइवेटाइजेशन आपको सुबह डिस्कशन हुआ है, क्या किया है. टैक्सेशन रिफॉर्म में एक वन की स्ट्रक्चरल रिफॉर्म जो हुआ है ना इस साल, जो पहले कभी नहीं हुआ, वो है पॉलिसी को कलेक्शन से अलग करना. पहले तो आप देखें ना ये था कि जी एक अगर पुलिसमैन है वही जो है पॉलिसी बना रहा है, वही जज है, ज्यूरी, एग्जीक्यूशनर भी वही है. तो अब तो ये ना कि जी अब पॉलिसी फाइनेंस बनाएगा और वैल्यू ड्रिवन पॉलिसी होगी, रेवेन्यू ड्रिवन नहीं होगी पॉलिसी. सो आप देखेंगे हमारा एक जो है टैक्स पॉलिसी ऑफिस सेटअप हो गया है, फाइनेंस में टीम आ गई है, उसको लीड कर रही है. और सारे हमारे बिजनेस जो चैम्बर्स हैं हम सबको अब जा रहे हैं. हम गए भी हैं कराची चैम्बर, हमारे कोलीग बैठे हैं बिलवानी साहब, इनसे हम ऑलरेडी मिल के आए, आपको बताएंगे एक्सपीरियंस के. मैं और नजीब साहब एक हम थोड़ा वक्त लगाया इनके साथ, और वी आर लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड टू प्रपोजल्स कि जो देखिए पता तो चीज़ें सारी हैं बट फोर्स उसकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का इशू रहा है. सो टैक्स पॉलिसी रिफॉर्म्स बड़े जो है वो इम्पॉर्टेंट हैं, वो की है जैसे मैंने शुरू में. फिर देन एनर्जी द सेकंड वन, उसमें 3 चीज़ें कर रहे हैं. उसमें व्हीलिंग ला रहे हैं, मल्टी बायर मार्केट क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, एंड द थर्ड वन इज़ रिड्यूसिंग द प्राइसेस for not only for industries but also for households. प्राइवेटाइजेशन आपने देख लिया, एक लैंडमार्क जो है प्राइवेटाइजेशन हुई है. वन ऑफ द बिडर्स इज ऑल्सो सिटिंग हियर इन फ्रंट ऑफ मी. सो बड़ा अच्छा रहा, आपने देखा पूरा प्रोसेस एक ट्रांसपेरेंट प्रोसेस रहा, अच्छी वैल्यू आई, इन्वेस्टमेंट होनी है उस पर, एविएशन सेक्टर में ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन हो रही हैं. देन द एसओई रिफॉर्म्स, एसओई रिफॉर्म्स में बोर्ड्स की जो है रीअपॉइंटमेंट हो रही है, प्लस 24 एसओईज हमने वहाँ की हैं. इसमें बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट 3-4 मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूँ. यूटिलिटी स्टोर हमने बंद कर दिया है, पैस्को हमने जो है वो उसको हम बंद कर रहे हैं. फिर हमने जो है पीआईए को प्राइवेटाइज कर दिया. तो एसओई रिफॉर्म्स भी अपनी जगह जो है अंडरगोइंग है. डिजिटल पाकिस्तान, ऑलरेडी आमिर ने बात की इस पर कि 3 क्रिटिकल वर्टिकल्स हैं, गवर्नमेंट की अपनी पेमेंट्स, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर और इंक्लूजन. ये तीनों पे जो है वो काम हो रहा है और बिल्कुल ऑब्जेक्टिव्स के साथ काम हो रहा है. फोर्थ वन इज़ राइट साइजिंग. राइट साइजिंग का तो फेडरल गवर्नमेंट $3 बिलियन का बिल है आज मेरा रनिंग ऑफ द फेडरल गवर्नमेंट. उसको हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि उसको कम से कम करें और वो रीडायरेक्ट करें रिसोर्सेज टुवर्ड प्रोडक्टिव सेक्टर्स. उसमें हमने ऑलरेडी जो है वो 3 मिनिस्ट्रीज़ को हमने बंद कर दिया है, मर्ज कर दिया है इनफैक्ट, और 4 मिनिस्ट्रीज़ को हम बंद कर रहे हैं, क्लोज डाउन कर रहे हैं. और आउट ऑफ 43 मिनिस्ट्रीज़ 8 वेव हमने 8वीं वेव हमारी चल रही है. देन पेंशन रिफॉर्म्स, अब जो भी हमारे कोलीग आ रहे हैं गवर्नमेंट में वो कंट्रीब्यूशन पे जा रहे हैं, वो पेंशन पे नहीं जा रहे. देन डेट मैनेजमेंट रिफॉर्म्स, उसमें आपने देखा है कि हमारी मैच्योरिटी बढ़ गई है, हम डिवर्सिफाई कर रहे हैं इन्वेस्टर्स के साथ, इन्वेस्टर बेस डिवर्सिफाई कर रहे हैं और नई मार्केट्स को एक्सप्लोर कर रहे हैं. डेट रिफॉर्म्स, और एज अ परसेंटेज ऑफ डेट टू जीडीपी हमने उसको नीचे किया है रिलेटिवली. इट वाज 74%, अराउंड 74% बैक इन 2022, नाउ इट्स डाउन टू 70%. सो देखिए ये रिफॉर्म्स हैं. देन द राइट साइज, क्विकली मैं बताऊंगा कि की पॉलिसीज़ जो है ना, 3 पॉलिसीज़ हमने दी हैं. ईबी की पॉलिसी आ गई है, एनर्जी की आ गई है, और आपकी जो है इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी. दिस इज़ द कैटलिस्ट, दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द कैटलिस्ट. ये इंशाल्लाह आप फंड के साथ डिस्कशन हो रहा है, ये आपको अनाउंस होती नजर आएगी. इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी जो कि एक टोन सेट करेगी इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन की. देन एक्सेस टू फाइनेंस, कि एसएमईज़ को, एग्रीकल्चर को किस तरह कर रहे हैं हम, एक्सेस टू फाइनेंस दे रहे हैं, कैसे गवर्नमेंट अपना फुट इन कर रही है बिल फर्स्ट लॉस गारंटी में. फिर वुमेन लेड बिजनेस को सपोर्ट किया जा रहा है, उसके अलावा ईवीज को सपोर्ट किया जा रहा है. सो दिस इज द एंटायर आई थिंक फ्रेमवर्क वी आर वर्किंग ऑन, द मिड टर्म फ्रेमवर्क, जो कि आई थिंक इज रिस्पॉन्स टू योर क्वेश्चन जो हम कर रहे हैं.
So thank you much, Khurram. So within the 3 areas that you picked up, the ones that stand out for me are related to energy, tariff and taxes. So linking the conversation earlier today, Essence of a Sayyid, somebody leading a large conglomerate in Pakistan, and we talked about digital, we talked about technology, we talked about the green growth pathways and focused on ESG. So how do you think you are leveraging as a business these 2 areas, AI for productivity as well as ESG, in terms of competitiveness, and what would be your advice to not just other businesses but the ecosystem of suppliers that you support to ensure that the competitiveness remains within the ecosystem from a business productivity perspective?
Thank you, Asad. First of all, I would like to thank Yunus Bhai and Asfar Hassan for giving me this opportunity. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका. देखें, I would like to start by saying that you're talking about competitiveness. Restoring competitiveness can only be achieved if you try to restore the confidence and the trust of the investors. And you need to do it today. I would like to first build the context before I answer your question. It will lead into that. So you first need to build the confidence today. And then you need to build on the human development for tomorrow. You cannot afford or cannot think of winning globally unless you get away with these inconsistent policies, or if you want to, let's say, win ahead in the next decade, you cannot think of going ahead and winning in global economy with undereducated and undernourished and unskilled population. These are the two things. If you consider them, then competitiveness doesn't become an economic agenda, it actually becomes a national survival agenda. This is how serious this topic is that we are discussing today. Very recently, we have seen some economic reforms bearing fruits. In the last couple of years, we have seen very, I would say, record inflation, exorbitant high rates, and muted growth. But that crisis has, alhamdulillah, thankfully, now begun to stabilize. But stabilization is not competitiveness, as we are talking about. You know, when we talk about the competitiveness, okay, it is not about how you did last year. It is about comparing yourself with the rest of the world. Because our challenge is not local, our challenge is global. And if you only discuss what's at the heart of the issue that we are discussing today, at the heart of Pakistan's economic challenge is one simple reality. And that reality is we need dollars. Either you call it lack of dollars or you say we need dollars. Dollars saved, yes. But more importantly, dollars earned. And how do you earn dollars? When investors put up their factories, when they set up services sections, and create capacity for exports. The world wants these kind of products that they are manufactured by investors. Then what's stopping our investors? What's stopping our investors not to invest? क्या मसला है? क्यों नहीं आगे आते? It's the lack of confidence and the trust. How can you build those trust is very, very important. And just to summarize, I have few examples. If you just, my friend just spoke about tax and energy reforms. So I'll just give you quick examples. As far as tax policy is concerned, which is quite punitive, you know, rupees 100 earned by any holding company, out of that, investors get only 30 rupees. The 70 rupees goes to government in the form of taxes, whether it's corporate tax, super tax, intercorporate dividend tax. Even Scandinavian countries, which are known for high interest rates, they don't do this. And they encourage diversification and scale. So in my opinion, you know, these kind of things needs to be done as soon as possible. In the previous panel, people were talking about execution. They were damn right. We did this. There was a recognition. There was a recognition to get away this kind of coercive testing. But it was reversed after 3 years, then restated back again, and then reversed. So who would invest, okay, when there is uncertainty about the capital and all? So that's one thing. One last thing that I would like to, there are several examples. In my opinion, the most important thing right now is to talk about long-term growth. And the long-term growth can only come in if you talk about human development, topic. Then I think, why don't you go ahead with the other panelists, because I don't want to hijack their time. If we have time, then I would really love to answer questions in that regard also.
Thank you, Hassan. So 3 key areas that you've highlighted is around confidence. It's about global competitiveness, how the international arena views our competitiveness, and last but not the least, long-term growth, which is fueled by human capital development. So moving on to the global landscape, Uma, and working it backwards in terms of Pakistan's policy, what do you think Pakistan can do in terms of economic diplomacy, embedding or embracing best practice models, strengthening free trade agreements, and move towards export diversification, both in terms of understanding what goods, what services, what sectors, what international markets? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dhaga Saab, for the invitation, and thank you, Asfar. What Khurram was saying was music to ears, that this kind of reform is in the pipeline, and thank you to Ehsan Saab also for highlighting how painfully difficult the sector business is becoming. I see Pakistan in 2 realities. It's a tale of 2 realities, because as an exporter, I belong from the traditional economy of Pakistan. However, as someone who's investing in the startups and the SME sector, I see a very different side of Pakistan, which is the emerging side. Sadly, what I see is the traditional sector is painfully going wrong. The emerging sector is shining gloriously, but both are at the same vantage, facing the same problem. There is no FDI. We're talking of exports and trade. No FDI means no exports in most cases. We say macroeconomic indicators are stabilizing, but if you do not harness all that Khurram has mentioned, if that is not harnessed in a specific time frame, it will all slide back. We've had better macroeconomic indicators in different cycles. They've gone up, but then they've slid back because there were no structural reforms. So that is probably the most important thing which has been highlighted. Coming to trade and market access and all those areas, I'm very hopeful when it comes to Pakistan, and because of 3 different things. The first important thing that I see is our market access, which is our economic diplomacy. I believe our government has done fairly well in diplomacy. If we are able to negotiate the US trade arrangement well, and if we do our rules of origins intelligently, I think we have a great chance of our textiles and other sectors picking up. Then we have our FTAs. We have the China Free Trade Agreement, preferential agreements with Turkey, Indonesia, Malaysia. Again, they are absolutely wonderful instruments, but the lacking has been that the private sector has not jumped up. Yes, one is, of course, the traditional reasons which has been discussed, that the problems are there. You go to investors, you show them the highest interest rates, you show them the highest energy costs in the region, and then on top of that, with the tax hitting 50 plus, the investor closes the file for Pakistan forever. But what I see is happening is a great market access. The diplomacy has been done well. What we need to do as private sector is harness it. It was the government's job, especially for the SME sector, to help them access this market, and let them know what are the arrangements. But what has gone wrong is the government has not been vigilant enough to tell them that these trade arrangements are there. What I really genuinely believe, especially for the startup exporters and the SMEs, some very, very intelligent and reasonably innovative exporters are coming up in diversified sectors, but of course they don't have scale because the FDI, the money is not there. But what can be done is primarily they need to sit and identify which product lines are zero-rated, number one. Second, they need to identify what are the rules of origins they can play with. Once you've done this kind of homework, you would know what product lines to go into. And my sincere advice to all the new startups, because that is the area I'm working and investing in nowadays, export-oriented startups, do not identify products that will first do well in domestic market and then go abroad. First, look at them as an export product, and later stage, if you want to come down, you can consider that. So one, the market access, the diplomacy has been done very well for Pakistan. We just need to understand how. Second thing, okay, the market access is there, how do we go about it? We take the Malaysian example, and again, I'm talking of SMEs and the startups, especially in technology. Malaysian private sector and the Malaysian government, along with Alibaba, did an arrangement where a digital export promotion zone was created. Not a regular export promotion zone, but a digital zone. The regular zones, like in Pakistan, have generally become real estate projects, but a digital export promotion zone has far more potential. Once a digital export promotion zone is there with all the new startups and all the new exporters that are coming up, even if you're one founder with 20 people working for you, you basically have your accounts, your finance, your logistics, everything taken care of by the zone, which is a great opportunity for anyone. And all the investments that are coming in the telecom sector, I feel a digital economic zone is very much to it. Not economic, but export oriented. Lastly, you have to map districts. If you want to highlight or utilize all these trade agreements, you have to map district-oriented things, how a particular district can become a cluster for a particular sector. Just shooting everywhere will not work. You have to identify districts from where clusters orient. And I say this having, I think in the last 2 months, from Sakhar to Khairpur to Rawat to Multan, everywhere I've gone, and I've seen some brilliant, innovative people sitting there in small clusters. If government was to work on creating them in a better way, I think that it will be an additional high up. 2-3 policy recommendations that I would have. We need to improve our utility of FTAs, free trade agreements. Right now, we're between 3% to 5%. It is very, very low. We compare it to in India. The Indians are utilizing their FTAs by 40%. What a stark difference. Firstly, utilization of FTAs is very important because the market access has already been created for you. In that sense, I think Yunus Dhaga Saab was sitting here. Dhaga Saab reviewed the China Free Trade Agreement in the second review, and post that from 1.7, the utilization of the free trade agreement went up to 5%. So there are little changes that can be done by the government side, but then mostly it's for the private sector to identify the rules of origins and the particular products and jump up. I would also suggest GSP is probably one of our finest utilized arrangements, but it is only textiles oriented. A renegotiation of the GSP scheme will also be very useful for Pakistan because this negotiation will help diversify and expand sectors the way textiles has expanded under GSP. The two other important things when you talk of FTAs is the more geographically close an FTA is, the better the performance.
So, Huma, just you see, so we have the focus on FTA's utility, and the other takeaway from your side is you're essentially saying that SMEs and startups will be bigger than the traditional sectors going forward.
No,
so,
I'm not really saying they'll be bigger, but I'm saying the kind of innovation I'm seeing in this emerging economy of Pakistan, they need the scale and only FDI can bring it, but the opportunity is unlimited.
So on this particular note, if we move to the traditional sector, which is mattering at the moment. So moving on to you, Javed Saab. just to understand, you see, we have heard what the government has undertook in terms of reforms and the pipeline of reforms. We have understood the pain points that have been picked up from a large conglomerate perspective. We have understood how our trade approach should be in terms of opening up markets, understanding local clusters doing well, and focusing on non-traditional sectors. So as a representative of the Chambers of Commerce and a traditional sector like textiles, how do you think all this reform is playing currently for the industry, and going forward, what further that one single incentive or that one single policy fixation that you need to get the desired outcome?
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम. थैंक यू यूनुस दागा और सारी टीम का. देखिए, ये जो बात की गई ना, इसके अंदर रिफॉर्म्स ला रहे हैं मगर रिजल्ट कोई नहीं आ रहा उसका. रिफॉर्म्स हो तो रिजल्ट आना चाहिए ना. टैक्स के ऊपर जो लास्ट बजट में किया इन्होंने, प्रोप्राइटरशिप का टैक्स पूरी दुनिया में जितना पाकिस्तान में है इतना कहीं भी नहीं है. प्रोप्राइटरशिप, एसएमई कहाँ से शुरू होता है? प्रोप्राइटरशिप से. तो आपने प्रोप्राइटरशिप का टैक्स पाकिस्तान में दुनिया में सबसे ज़्यादा है. फिर कॉर्पोरेट्स का अलग है, वो भी ज़्यादा है. अच्छा, दूसरी आप बोलते हो एनर्जी के अंदर हम रिफॉर्म्स ला रहे हैं, स्ट्रक्चर में रिफॉर्म्स ला रहे हैं. आपके पास कैपेसिटी पेमेंट के पैसे ले रहे हैं और आज मुल्क में लोड शेडिंग हो रही है. आपके पास बिजली एक्सेस है मगर बिजली का कनेक्शन लेने जाते हैं तो एक साल में कनेक्शन नहीं मिलता. और कनेक्शन लेने जब जाते हैं तो कनेक्शन लेने के इतने चार्जेस हैं कि उसमें एक छोटी इंडस्ट्री लग सकती है. तो ये सब चीज़ों को देखना पड़ेगा. देखिए, इसके लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर फेडरल गवर्नमेंट या फेडरल मिनिस्ट्री कॉमर्स एक चीज़ डिसाइड करती है, बेहतरीन डॉक्यूमेंट्स बनता है, बेहतरीन पॉलिसी बनती है, बेहतरीन ट्रेड पॉलिसी बनती है, उस पर कभी भी इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं होता. इसका मैं एक एग्जांपल दूं. एक टेक्सटाइल पॉलिसी 2009 में अनाउंस हुई. वो तमाम स्टेक होल्डर्स को ऑन बोर्ड लिया गया और पॉलिसी बनी. उस पर जब इम्प्लीमेंट हुआ तो पहले साल 7.5% एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ी, सेकेंड ईयर 35% एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ी, थर्ड ईयर वो जो उस पर इम्प्लीमेंट रोक दी तो एक्सपोर्ट कम हो गई. अगर वो कंटिन्यू इम्प्लीमेंट होती उस पर पॉलिसी पे तो आज पाकिस्तान जो है उसका एक्सपोर्ट टेक्सटाइल पॉलिसी कंटिन्यू बनती और कंटिन्यू उस पर इम्प्लीमेंट होता तो आज पाकिस्तान $50 बिलियन सिर्फ टेक्सटाइल में एक्सपोर्ट कर रहा होता. टेक्सटाइल की इंडस्ट्रियाँ बंद हुई, बड़े बड़े एक्सपोर्ट के हाउस बंद हो गए. जो 40 साल में कोई 20 अरब 40 अरब के एक्सपोर्ट में पहुँचे थे वो बंद हो गए. कंसिस्टेंसी पॉलिसी की बनी थी. पॉलिसी में एक तो मैं ये कहूँगा कि कॉमर्स मिनिस्ट्री फेडरल की पॉलिसी अलग होती है, प्रोविंशियल की अलग होती है. हमारे यहाँ कोई डायरेक्शन ही नहीं है कौन सी इंडस्ट्री कहाँ लगनी चाहिए. आप वो इंडस्ट्री एग्रीकल्चर लैंड पे लगा रहे हैं जिससे एग्रीकल्चर लैंड खराब हो रही है. कोई एक ऐसा है इधर कंट्रोल या रेगुलेटरी बॉडी है कि जो बताए ये इंडस्ट्री इस जगह पे लगाओ, या कोई ऐसी रेगुलेटरी बॉडी है कि जो ये चेक करती है कि कौन सी इंडस्ट्री नुकसान में जा रही है. दुनिया के अंदर हैं ये, कई कंट्रीज़ में है कि वो ऑब्जर्व करती हैं और चेक करती है कि इंडस्ट्री बंद तो नहीं हो रही, इंडस्ट्री नुकसान में तो नहीं जा रही. पाकिस्तान के अंदर कई इंडस्ट्रियां लगी और आज वो इंडस्ट्री एक भी नहीं है और मिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स की इंडस्ट्रियां लगी. पॉलिएस्टर फिलामेंट प्लांट कितने लगे, आज कितने चल रहे हैं. ड्राई बैटरी सेल की कितनी इंडस्ट्रियां होती थी, आज कितनी चल रही हैं. बाईसाइकिल की कितनी इंडस्ट्रियां होती थी, आज कितनी चल रही हैं. तो हम सिर्फ इसी हम जो है कम्पिटिटिवनेस के ऊपर बाकायदा स्टडी कराइए.
तो जावेद साहब, जो आपने दो मेन एरियाज हाईलाइट किए हैं, एक है पॉलिसी कंसिस्टेंसी ईयर ऑन ईयर, साल ब साल. दूसरा है कि हम फेडरल اور پروونشل لیول پہ کنٹینیوٹی رکھتے یا نہیں رکھتے. آپ اگر اپنا پوائنٹ کلوز کریں کیونکہ نیکسٹ سیشن ڈپٹی پرائم منسٹر ڈاکٹر نجیب صاحب پاس.
جی میں یہ کہنا چاہ رہا ہوں کہ کامرس منسٹری اور انڈسٹریز منسٹری فیڈرل اور پروونس ایک ہی بھی لائنس پہ ہونی چاہیے تاکہ وہ پالیسی کے اندر کنسسٹنسی بھی لائیں اور پالیسی ایک جگہ. ہمارے یہاں ملک میں کیا ہو رہا ہے کہ ایک پروونس سے انڈسٹری دوسرے پروونس میں شفٹ ہوتی ہے, باہر تو الگ جا رہے ہیں, ایک پروونس سے دوسرے پروونس میں جا رہے ہیں. وہ کیوں جا رہے ہیں کہ
سو جاوید صاحب یہ بڑا امپورٹنٹ پوائنٹ ہے آئی تھنک جہاں پہ اپنی کنسسٹنسی اور ایز آف ڈوئنگ بزنس
منسٹری آف انڈسٹریز اور منسٹری آف کامرس ایک ساتھ ہونی چاہیے.
ٹھیک ہے,
ایک ہی امبریلا میں ہونی چاہیے اور پالیسی ایسی ہونی چاہیے کہ 5 سال تک اگر پالیسی بنی اس کو کوئی آبزرو کرے, اس کی مانیٹرنگ کرے, اس کے اندر کنسسٹنسی ہے اور اس میں چیک کرے. اور ایسا نہیں ہو فائننس بل میں ہم نے یہ اپروو کر لیا اب نیکسٹ بجٹ میں کریں گے.
ٹھیک ہے جاوید صاحب,
آپ اس کو فوراً چینج کریں.
سو کنسسٹنسی اور کنٹینیوٹی کو بیسس بناتے ہوئے, سو دیٹس اے پوائنٹ دیٹ یو ہیو ایڈڈ, ویری انٹرسٹنگ, پروونشل ورسز فیڈرل اینڈ ایز آف ڈوئنگ بزنس in terms of the differences between provinces. اسی اب ایز اے کنکلوژن میں اگر ڈاکٹر خاقان آپ کے پاس آؤں, I think it will be great to know from yourself. You had a wonderful article written yesterday. If we can have Dr. Khaqan's slide, please. So, we are currently in an IMF stabilization form. So, how do you see Pakistan building a credible growth framework within the IMF engagement that is designed for stabilization rather than expansion?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. اگر آپ اس گراف کو دیکھیں تو آپ کو اندازہ ہوگا کہ 1960 سے لے کر آج تک پاکستان کی گروتھ ٹریجیکٹری کیا رہی ہے. 6% ایوریج کیا پہلے چند سال میں, 4.9% پہ آئے, 4% پہ آئے, 3.6% پہ آئے. سو پاکستان's growth trajectory has gone down since 1960. That's the most important fact we should take home tonight. The second most important fact is کہ 24 دفعہ IMF کے در پہ گئے ہیں. IMF lender of the last resort ہے. یہ بھی یاد رکھیے کہ 24 پروگرام کمپلیٹ نہیں کیے, اور یہ بات مجھے اس لیے معلوم ہے کہ میرے سامنے 2 ایسے حضرات بیٹھے ہیں, ڈاگا صاحب اور ڈار صاحب. ہم نے 13-16 کے علاوہ, یہ بات لکھ لیجئے, کوئی بھی لانگ ٹرم پروگرام کمپلیٹ ہی نہیں کیا. ڈار صاحب جب میں فائنینس منسٹری میں آیا تو انہوں نے مجھے یہ کہا کہ پاکستان از نون ایز اے ون ٹرانش کنٹری, اینڈ آئی سیڈ ٹو ڈار صاحب کہ ہم اس کو تبدیل کر دیں گے. 13-16 کا واحد پروگرام ہے جو پاکستان نے کمپلیٹ کیا. سو ہم ان کے ریفارم کو برا تو کہہ سکتے ہیں, پر آپ نے وہ بھی کمپلیٹ نہیں کیا. آج آپ جہاں کھڑے ہیں, 2026 should be the following for you. Number 1, go back to the IMF and renegotiate on what Dhaga Saab started with. آپ کی جو ایکسپینڈیچر سائڈ آف دی ایکویشن ہے, دیٹ شوڈ بیکم سینٹرل. واٹ ڈز دیٹ مین؟ اٹ ڈز ناٹ مین دا ڈسکریشنری ایکسپینڈیچر آف پینشنز اینڈ ایوری تھنگ. یہ فگرز نوٹ کر لیجیے گا, 225 ارب آپ صرف ٹیرف ڈفرینشیل سبسڈی میں دیں گے. آج ختم کر دیجئے اس کو اور ملک کا ٹیرف سیپریٹ کر دیجئے. 400 ارب سرکولر ڈیٹ کو مینٹین کرنے کے لیے دیں گے. 750 ارب انکم سپورٹ پروگرام میں دیں گے. فیڈرل کا کام نہیں ہے. میں تو ابھی آپ کو گنوا رہا ہوں کہ آپ کے پاس 1200 ارب ہیں. اور کیا کریں؟ آپ اپنا سپر ٹیکس نیچے لائیں, آپ اپنے ود ہولڈنگ پریزمپٹیو ٹیکسز کو ختم کریں, آپ الیکٹریسٹی ٹیکسز کو ختم کریں. آپ اپنی فرینڈلی کنٹریز کے پاس جائیں اور ان کو کہیں کہ جو 9 سے 13 ارب ڈالر آپ کے پاس ہے اس کو 5 سال کے لیے ری شیڈیول کر دیں, آپ کا بیلنس آف پیمنٹ بھی سیٹل کر جائے گا. دس شوڈ بی یور فرسٹ آرڈر آف کنسرن وین یو گو ٹو دی IMF. پاکستان کا جو ماڈل ہے ایک 4 ایکویشنز پہ بیسڈ ہے, اسی پہ ایک اسپریڈ شیٹ بنتی ہے. اس کو سمجھیے, جب تک فنڈ کے پاس اس طرح کی پروپوزل سے نہیں جائیں گے آپ مسئلہ حل نہیں کریں گے. نمبر 2, پاکستان اس وقت 4 چیزیں جب تک ٹھیک نہیں کرے گا گروتھ ٹریجیکٹری ٹھیک نہیں ہوگی. نمبر 1, آپ کا انویسٹمنٹ ٹو GDP ریشو 13% پہ ہے. یہ یاد رکھیے, ایسٹ ایشیا کا میریکل جس کی بار بار بات آپ کرتے ہیں وہ 30 से 35% के इन्वेस्टमेंट टू जीडीपी पे था। थोड़ी देर के लिए टैक्स टू जीडीपी को भूल जाइए। पाकिस्तान का सेविंग्स रेट आज 14% पे है, ये इनका सेविंग्स रेट 30% पे था। पाकिस्तान इज़ अ हाई कंजम्पशन सोसाइटी एट 94%। और आखिर में पाकिस्तान की प्रोडक्टिविटी हमारे अपने छोटे फार्मर की 1/3 या आधी है हमारे बेस्ट फार्मर से। ये 4 चीज़ें करेक्ट किए बगैर ग्रोथ करेक्ट होगी नहीं। सबसे पहला जो एक्शन आपको करना है, यू नीड टू हैव पीपल। मनमोहन सिंह 15 लोग साथ लेकर आया था जब उसने इंडिया का मिरेकल किया था, ये याद रखिए हमेशा, इसके बगैर वो मिरेकल नहीं हुआ था। 21 फिलीपींस के इकोनॉमिस्ट ने फिलीपींस का प्रोग्राम लिखा था। पाकिस्तान जहां आज खड़ा हुआ है, ईजीएस्ट वे अगर आपने बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट्स को ठीक करना हो फंड से निकलने के लिए, हियर्स द टिप। 10 अरब डॉलर की इंपोर्ट है एग्रीकल्चर की, 6-7 अरब डॉलर की एक्सपोर्ट है। इस 3 अरब को अगले 3 साल में मैच कर लें, आप फंड के प्रोग्राम से बाहर आ जाएंगे। दैट्स योर नंबर 1 एक्शन। नंबर 2 एक्शन जो आपको अपनी फर्म्स को ठीक करने के लिए है, NFIS की बात करना बहुत आसान है, अब ये ग्रोथ ठीक क्यों नहीं होती? पाकिस्तान में 70 लाख एंटरप्राइजेज हैं कमर्शियल और इंडस्ट्रियल, 90% SMEs हैं। यू नो दी फाइनेंस टू देम, सिर्फ 3 लाख के पास फॉर्मल फाइनेंस है। अगर आप इसको तब्दील करना चाहते हैं, जस्ट लास्ट पॉइंट,
एब्सोल्युटली
लास्ट पॉइंट, आप इसको तब्दील कर दीजिए अगले 3 साल में। इस वक्त जो टारगेट है वो ये है कि हम 2 लाख तब्दील करेंगे। इन 2 चीज़ों से आप अपना बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट्स अलॉन्ग विद मेंटेनिंग योर रेमिटेंसेस मेंटेन कर लेंगे और लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ को उस दहाने पर ले आएंगे कि हम थोड़ी सी प्रोडक्टिविटी को बढ़ाकर इसको संभाल लें, और बाकी चीज़ें जैसे सरकार ने बताई हैं, वी शुड मूव ऑन देम।
So Dr. Khan, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the panel, but just before we close, just one word thoughts from you as the final question. So we are talking about consistency, continuity, and lack of uncertainty, taking away that fear. So one signal investors need to see in 2026, just one word, starting with yourself, 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿.
I think confidence, of course, and followed by stability and consistency for the next 10 years.
This is 10 years confidence and stability.
No, starting with confidence and then stability
10 years
and
stability
for the next 10 years.
Brilliant.
For 2026?
Just 2026, that sets the right direction.
Restore the confidence.
Confidence again. Huma.
Confidence number 1, but also anchoring our structural reforms right away within months and not years now. Just getting started.
So reduce the timeline of reforms, escalate and expedite. Javed sir.
जो शख्स भी इंडस्ट्री लगाए उसको 10 दिन के अंदर तमाम यूटिलिटी के कनेक्शन दे दें।
Brilliant. So that is ease of doing business. Dr. Khan.
Expenditure reforms.
Expenditure reforms. So I'd like to thank the panelists, the organizers for a wonderful session. I hope the dialogue has been useful. So a round of applause please for all the panelists and their thoughts. So thank you very much. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
So we will be presenting souvenirs to the panelists of this session, and to present the souvenirs I'd like to request Senator Mohammad Ishaq Dar to please do the honors. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan will be presenting the shields. So first of all, I'd like to request Mr. Mohammad Ali Tabba to get his souvenir, please, from the Foreign Minister. I'm sorry, my bad. 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿 Shehzad, advisor to Finance Minister. 𝐏𝐚𝐤, if I didn't recognize your face, I would be in trouble. Thank you. Okay. Ehsan Zafar Saeed Saab, please. Next, I'd request Huma Fakhar to please receive her souvenir. Mr. Mohammad Javed Bawani, sir, please, if you could receive your souvenir. And in the end, our fiery panelist, Dr. 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿𝐬𝐿𝐬𝐿 Najib, if you could please receive your shield. Last but not the least, our moderator, Asad Hamid Saab, if you could please receive your souvenir. Thank you very much. And now if please everybody could stand for our group photograph. I'd like to invite Sir Sohail Aman and Ma'am Farina to please join us on the stage for the group photo. Ehsan Zafar Saab, if you could please join us on the stage. Is Ehsan Zafar Saab around? Thank you. So we're ready to start the closing session, From Dialogue to Delivery, Advancing Pakistan's Growth Agenda. This is going to be another power-packed session. Thank you to all our worthy speakers for joining us in this session. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Saab. Thank you for taking time out. Without further delay, we'll start the session as we are running a bit late. We will have our first address by the CEO of Lucky Cement, Mr. Mohammad Ali Tabba. And as I was going through your profile, Tabba Saab, I didn't know what to include and what to leave out. MashaAllah, you have such a dynamic profile. So he started his journey with Yunus Brothers Group and contributed to their growth and diversification. He assumed the role of CEO Lucky Cement, succeeding his late father in 2005. He holds prominent positions as the chairman of Yunus Textile Mills, Lucky Motors Corporation, Lucky Electric Power Company, and Gudoon Textile Mills. He's also served as vice chairman of Lucky Core Industries, formerly ICI Pakistan. In addition to these roles, he's also the chairman of National Resources Limited, a mining company that has received exploration leases in Chagi district of Balochistan. Beyond the corporate sphere, he assumes pivotal roles in industry and community organizations. He serves as the chairman of the All Pakistan Cement Manufacturing Association. He's been the chairman, Pakistan Textile Council and Pakistan Business Council. His commitment to philanthropy is also exemplified through his role as the chairman of the Aziz Tabba Foundation, dedicated to projects like social welfare, education, health, and housing. The Tabba Heart Institute and Tabba Kidney Institute in Karachi are epitomes of ATF's significant services to the community. In acknowledgement of his contributions, he was honored with the title of Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum in 2010. He also received the Karachi Chamber of Commerce and Industry Businessman of the Year Gold Medal Award for 2012-13. He's also the recipient of one of the nation's highest civilian awards, the Sitara Imtiaz. Tabba Sahab, I'd request you to please take the podium.
Honorable 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐢𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐧 Sahab, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Aswar Ehsan Sahab, Yunus Daga Sahab, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I'm truly honored to be here to talk at Pakistan Policy Dialogue. Let me begin by saying that Pakistan has achieved macro stability. The overall sentiment has improved and business activity has picked up. In recent months, we have seen acquisitions by Pakistani companies taking over multinationals which were exiting from Pakistan, and also the privatization process which started, and a landmark transaction of PIA, again by Pakistani conglomerate, is a landmark achievement in the history of Pakistan. This not just only starts the process, but also it gives confidence, in the whole system and in the government and the private sector that Pakistani businessman has the ability, has the capacity, has the required capital to participate in future privatization process. And I'm sure that we need to understand that the government has to be in the role of regulations and making policy. They should not be in the business to run business. And unfortunately, the businesses which are, we call it SOEs, which are under government administration, most of those SOEs are losing money. And I believe that the government has the realization that they need to unlock and they need to privatize and speed up the process of privatization, which includes steel mill, discos, gencos, and other areas, which I think is very important, to unlock the true potential and unlock the true potential in the economy of Pakistan. So, and let me also tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the privatization not just get rid of the government, difficulty to run the business, but it also brings in a lot of new investments. And when you bring in new investment, that gives you the economic growth, that gives the new employment possibilities, and also the overall the perception and the image, which is required, also takes place in a very positive way, which is also very good for the country. We really need to understand, that Pakistan, we talked about in this policy talk about exports, energy, taxation, and all those are very important. Higher taxation leads the investment to slow down. And at the same time, if you look at the PIA privatization first phase, the reason it was not successful in the first phase because of the taxation. And when the privatization and the government realized, that the taxation has to be favorable for any business or for any sector, then it would be possible, to turn around, to make new investments. And because we worked day and night with the government to make sure that they have the right policy, and that's why they were able to do it. The aviation is a very important sector and plays a very important role in any country's progress and prosperity. If you look at Dubai, Emirates actually made Dubai. If you look at Singapore Airline, it really transformed Singapore. And many other countries have been transformed because of the aviation. And Pakistan was lacking a true good aviation, and hopefully with the privatization, this industry will become more vibrant, it will create new jobs, and will bring good name to the country. There are other new industries. We talk about mining, that has a true potential in Pakistan. The Rikodik transaction is again a landmark transaction in the history of Pakistan that will bring in a very large investment of about $7.5–8 billion. And at the same time, the private sector, from Pakistan is also stepping up to invest into new sectors. And the mining is also becoming a very interesting and very important industry for Pakistan, especially copper and gold. Today, if you look at the commodity prices around the world, when I remember when we were involved in the Rikodik, back in 2019, the copper prices was about $6,000. Today, copper price is about $13,000. At that time, the gold prices were around $1,500 an ounce. Today, it has crossed $4,600 an ounce. So with the true reserves, which we have in terms of copper and gold, itself can transform the entire country. And Pakistan can actually become the major exporter of both the commodities. The other is the shipping. Pakistan's shipping industry under PNSC also is not performing well. And one of the reasons is, again, that the government is involved in the business. But the second problem is also that the taxation in the shipping industry is also very high, like the aviation industry. If Pakistan has to transform its shipping industry, it has to do the same reform as they have done in PIA and in aviation. The other industry which is very important for Pakistan is hospitality. If you look at Pakistan, with the population of 240 million people, how many new hotels have come up in Pakistan in the last 10 years? Hardly you can name few that has come up in the city of Islamabad, maybe in Lahore, and some in the tourist area of Nathia Gali and Skardu and that areas. But in Karachi, we haven't seen any new hotels in the last 30 years. I mean, there has been change of names, but they have not been able to come up. And the reason they have not been able to come up is because the land prices are so high in these large urban cities that the feasibility of building a new hotel becomes unfeasible. And also the taxation. Again, the taxation on the hospitality industry is so high compared to our regional countries, So we really need to understand that why Pakistan is unable to unlock its true potential. It's the cost of doing business, ease of doing business. Our taxation is absolutely out of place compared to our regional countries. And the utility, people talked about utility, you really need to understand that if you don't have a competitive tariff, both for electricity and gas, and if you don't have those discos being privatized, because somebody mentioned that it takes years to get a new connection, and it's true, because for one of my factory, it took 2 years to get a new connection, 2 years, and going from ministry to secretaries to the distribution companies, back and forth with investment of 2 billion rupees. How many people can afford 2 billion rupees to get electric connection? So we really need to understand that when we criticize business community, that they're not being able to part of the growth, but they are part of the growth. They are part of the solution. But you need to equip the business community, industries, with tools that they are able to unleash the true potential of this country. Also, Pakistan has a very large population. We talk about Singapore, reforming its tariff policy. But Singapore with a population of, 6–7 million people. You can't compare Pakistan with the large population that you cannot depend on import. You really need to work on your own domestic-led growth and export-led growth. Also, at the same time, Pakistan has to work on water security to make sure that we build a lot of small reservoirs as well as the large water reservoirs. It's very important because the way the regional conflicts are happening in the world, we need to make sure that Pakistan is self-sufficient in water, Pakistan is self-sufficient in food, and Pakistan is self-sufficient in energy. And in energy, when we talk about, it's not about imported energy, we have to be self-sufficient with our own domestic resource. So we have third coal, We have our own indigenous local gas. We have hydel power plants. We have solar, wind, So unless we don't secure ourselves with the local indigenous solutions, and we will always be dependent on the imported fuel or imported food or imported consumer items, then we will never be self-sufficient. We will never be able to stand on our feet. So if we work simultaneously and not on patchwork, what happens in Pakistan that we work on patchwork. We take IT industry, we put all the effort to make sure that IT industry goes. We ignore the other manufacturing sector, we ignore the other sectors. So we really need to work hand in hand to achieve and diversify our export growth. And that export growth will not going to come by talk. It's not going to come by having a panel discussion. It's going to come through policy measure. And the policy measure, has to bound Pakistani manufacturing companies to export out of Pakistan. It's not going to come without giving carrot and stick policy that the government has to mandate, the manufacturing companies to export 5%, 10%, 15%, 20% of their revenue to export. That's how they will be able to diversify the export. The other, so if we unleash, the agriculture growth, our export growth, our manufacturing growth, then we will be able to achieve 5+ growth of our GDP. If we work in silos and we work on patchwork, then our destiny is always going to be between 3 and 3.5%, which is not enough because the population growth itself of Pakistan is about 2.5%. So a country like Pakistan has to grow 5%, 6% annually to make sure that we are able to create enough jobs for our young population. And we have to make Pakistan self-sustainable in the areas which I mentioned is energy, water, food. How are we going to achieve the export diversification, and what is the problem behind it? So if you look at the industrialization in Pakistan in the 60s were perfect, it started to happen in 1974 when the industry was nationalized in Pakistan. It actually broke the backbone of the industry. Then fast forward in early 80s, the Afghan transit conflict, which then opened up the Afghan transit trade, which was misused, and it actually broke the SME. When we talk about SME, when all the goods were coming under the Afghan transit in late 80s, which was not used in Afghanistan, it was being sold in Pakistan, all the SMEs started to close down because they could not compete with the smuggled, non-duty paid, non-custom paid, goods against the manufacturing, because manufacturing needs some support, and if the goods come without any proper duty structure or in the informal sector, then it's not able to do it. And now the problem is that with the national tariff policy, and I think which we take very much proud of it, is going against the manufacturing sector in Pakistan. We need to understand when the cost of doing business is high in Pakistan and you lower the tariff, there is no way the manufacturing sector can compete in Pakistan. So what we do is that we hire foreign consultants, who sit in Islamabad and make policy for Pakistan rather than Pakistani making policy for Pakistan. That's our biggest problem, And what they do is that they have intellectual comparison of the Western developed world in terms of the cost of doing business with Pakistan. They don't understand the micro and the macro challenges which we face in terms of our higher interest rate, higher logistic cost, higher utility cost, and then you say that Pakistan is not competitive, Pakistan needs protectionism. Pakistan doesn't need protectionism, Pakistan needs level playing field. And when you bring the duties down, there is no way you can compete. So this is going to be another straw, of destroying the large manufacturing base in Pakistan. So if you really have to look at it, we really need to revisit our national tariff policy reform. Otherwise, the large-scale industry also going to close down in Pakistan. So I think my time is up. Thank you so much, and I congratulate you for hosting a wonderful event, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tabba Sahab. So I'd now request Mr. Mohammad Yunus Daga Sahab to please come and share the key takeaways and recommendations, and we will manage the time. Don't worry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Mr. Ishaq Dar Sahab, Mr. Mohammad Ali Tabba Sahab, Mr. Hassan, Mr. Asfar, thank you so much, and Ms. Farina. What we are discussing today, sir, is that we are matching the government's plans, government's ideas, government's targets of growth, of the economic progress, with the policy framework that the government has, and we want to see whether this policy framework, the multitudes of policies, are they helping the government or not? Next slide, please. So we have worked it around Udan Pakistan and Prime Minister's economic transformation agenda. Next. So before we discuss about the future, we must see where this government has started and how did it perform. Next slide. So we are near at the default risk, and the government managed to increase our forex reserves 4 times, the trade deficit reduced by 50%, remittances were increased by 52%, and current account deficit was reduced and turned into a current account surplus. Inflation came down also. But one thing we must ask and see in the hindsight, that whether these contractionary policies brought the stabilization, was it the easing of the global commodity prices, the super cycle of commodity prices. Secondly, we should ask whether the higher employment and the higher unemployment and the poverty rates, are these the signs of stabilization in a country, or they are precursors for unrest? Similarly, the low industrial growth that we have seen in the last few years because of the contractionary policy has also turned into an industrial stagnation. The lowering of the purchasing power of consumers is also not good for an economy's economic revival. Next slide, please. So this is where we say that this is not the stabilization which I would have looked for, where our debt has increased from 29 trillion to now 94 trillion. So this Pakistan is now in a debt trap where 50% of our divisible pool resources, which is what the federal government gets, it goes into debt payments, and the federal government starts its day one with a new debt. Next. Next, please. Now, this is a slide which I would like Mr. Dar to see, that these are the 3 lines that move. One is the policy rate, the other is the national inflation, which is in blue, and the global commodity prices in pink. The policy rate is in red. So we have been telling State Bank of Pakistan from day one that what Pakistan is suffering from, or the inflation, is not a demand pull inflation, it is a cost push inflation. And we will remain in this inflation till the time these international commodity prices ease. But then the State Bank went on from increasing the policy rate from 7% to 22%, which created a deindustrialization in Pakistan. And ultimately, the inflation came down when the international commodity prices came down. So this chart proves that our content from the beginning was right, that we were suffering from a cost-push inflation, and our policy of increasing the policy rate was not suited for this type of inflation. Next slide, please. Now, the cost of this contractionary policies, and by contractionary policy, I mean not only the monetary policy, but also the taxation policy. This have costed in high rates of poverty, as I said, unemployment, high interest rates, which has caused deindustrialization, and very punitive tax regime, which everybody is saying now. Even the salaried class, 230% higher taxes now than in the last 3 years. The targeting exports for taxes rather than for growth. And then investment and capital flight. Next slide, please. So now what we see in the last 6 months, our trade deficit has increased by 34.5%. Our exports are down by 8.7%. The growth, which we are targeting 6%, we are still far from that. And running of the civil government, 75% more than in the last 3 years. Next. But the basic problem remains that we have not been able to broaden our tax net. We are not being able to tax agriculture and the services, especially retail and wholesale. Next. I'm going fast because Dar Sahab has a meeting, so please bear with me. Now, this is what we should look at it when we are saying that we want an export-led growth, but our exports are falling. And this is what we feel that is the reason for that we suddenly exposed our export sector to very high rates of interest taxes. And now the cumulative tax burden is, some say it is 50%, some say it's 60%, but definitely the kind of preferred or the concessional rates that our competitors are enjoying, it makes our exports lesser competitive apart from the energy prices and high interest rates. Next slide. So what our analysis of 3-4 basic, because this is a very thick book and there are lots of graphs and everything, but we are just taking out some very key findings. So the trade deficit is because of the premature import liberalization, which we did last year, and that too a bit of a fast track. Already we are suffering from a $5 billion of increase in trade deficit, and it may go to $10 billion by the end of the year. Very high cost for this policy. It should have been calibrated in a much cautious way. Similarly, the exports, as I told, because of the taxes. Next slide. Expanding tax net. There's no seriousness in that, neither by the federal government nor by the provincial governments. And even the IMF has turned a blind eye to it, because we see that that we have been told, since the last 2 years, we have been told that the provinces have agreed to tax agriculture income on the equal rates like any other income. And the potential that we see is of 800 billion rupees. But the Punjab keeps only 10.5 billion as a revenue target for agriculture income tax, and Sindh keeps 8 billion. So it shows that there is no seriousness on the provincial governments. And when NEC approved all these things, and IMF is watching everything, they have not been able to put right sense into the provincial governments. Similarly, retail and wholesale sectors have never been tapped properly. It is because of the political will, one would say. So unbearable tax burden is increasing every day on the netted taxpayers. Next slide. Next, please. So now, this is the basic theme of our report, that there are a multitude of policies, and which all these policies, in an ideal situation, should work towards the government's plans and targets, the government's economic plans and the targets of exports, revenues, and next slide, please, growth as well. This policy, we went through a lot of policies in our report. And what we came out was that there is a disconnect between economic plans and monetary policies. Our plans talk about growth, but our monetary policies work on contraction. Till today, we have a real interest rate of 4.5%, which is one of the highest in the world. There's a disconnect between economic plans and taxation policies. Like I said, we want an export-led growth, but we also want to put a very punitive tax on our exports. Similarly, there is absence of very important policies, like we don't have a national logistics policy. A maritime policy, which is under preparation, it will only be a part of our overall logistics policy, which also include the road transportation, air transportation, and railways and everything. We don't have a national industrial policy. We are still in the making since 2018. But then the most critical or most worrying thing is the policy swings. 1 year, we find that exports is the pampered child of the government. So exports won't be taxed. So I want to come into exports, I come into exports, and then next year I'm told, no, we will put the highest tax on you. So these policy swings do not augur well for trust in the government's policies. Similarly, the tariff policy, first tariff policy and second tariff policy have different angles totally. Because the first tariff policy was about lowering or bringing to zero the tariffs on our basic raw material and machinery, which would help our industry to become competitive, our exports to become competitive. But the second tariff policy was all about import liberalization, which then have costed us in terms of increasing trade deficit. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, these are the 4 pillars on which any sustainable growth can be planned. Number 1 is human resource. After devolution of in 18th Amendment, these are most of the education, health, training subjects have gone to the provinces. But we hardly see any national dialogue on our human resource, and that's why in the next slides I will tell you how we have lost on the human resource side and towards our productivity and our human development index. Everything is going down. Leveraging urban agglomeration, cities to be taken as engines of growth, we have not been able to do that, especially Karachi, which contributes 56% to our exports, is suffering badly. Then the governance, we have taken back all the devolution that was there in 2009 after the 18th Amendment, and then we don't have a functioning judiciary. But to top it all, we should have a coherent, consistent, and predictable policy framework. Next slide, please. So this is one slide which I'll try to bring attention of Dar Sahab. Dar Sahab, ये जो slides हैं ना, इसमें 10-10 साल के 2 पीरियड हैं. एक 10 साल वो हैं जो कि हमने devolution to the local governments के साथ गुजारे, जिसमें हमने हाईएस्ट अचीव किया अपना enrollment rate of 57%, starting from 42 in 1999 to 57% in 2009. This was the highest that we achieved. But then, what is more worrisome, अगले 10 साल फिर हम नीचे आते गए, बजाय इसके को उसको मेंटेन कर सकते या आगे बढ़ते, हमारा enrollment पाकिस्तान का 57 से 51 पे आ चुका है, 2020 की ये जो रिपोर्ट है, और सबसे ज़्यादा इसमें कराची में कम हुआ है, सिंध में कम हुआ है. तो प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट्स को ने जब ये सारा सब्जेक्ट्स वापस लिए डिस्ट्रिक्ट से, तो they have not been able to put their house in order or properly focus on that. This leads into all the next slides that I'll show. Next slides, please, Arjun. Next page. Now, Human Development Index, we were 2010 में हम बहुत करीब थे with India, Bangladesh, Nepal. अब इन सब से हम नीचे आ चुके हैं पिछले 10 साल में. Human Capital Index, which is the utilization of human resource, उसमें भी हम नीचे आ चुके हैं. Next slide, please. कॉम्पिटिटिव, और ये हमें इकोनॉमी को किस तरह हर्ट कर रहा है. आप देखें कम्पिटिटिव इंडेक्स पे आप कितने नीचे आ चुके हैं, और इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा जो हर्ट आपको कर रहा है स्किल्स ऑफ योर ह्यूमन रिसोर्स. तो ये मैं आपको बताना चाह रहा था कि सिर्फ आप एजुकेशन पे जो हमने तवज्जो छोड़ दी आफ्टर डेवोल्यूशन, जब हमने विड्रॉ कर लिया, तो उसने कितना हमें नुकसान पहुँचाया. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. लेबर प्रोडक्टिविटी. अब ये स्लाइड बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट है सर. अगर आप 2010 को देखें ना, तो हम 2010 में हमारी प्रोडक्टिविटी बांग्लादेश से ज़्यादा थी, इंडिया से भी बेहतर थी, इंडिया के करीब थी, और वियतनाम के भी करीब थी. तो हम चारों मुल्क तकरीबन सेम प्रोडक्टिविटी पे थे 2010 में. मैं बहुत पुरानी 1960-1970 की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं पिछले 10 साल पहले की बात कर रहा हूँ. एंड वी लॉस्ट इट इन लास्ट 10 ईयर्स. सब ने उसके बाद अपनी ह्यूमन रिसोर्स पे काम किया, और हमने जैसे बताया कि इनरोलमेंट तक जो बेसिक चीज़ है उसको भी हम छोड़ दिए. स्किल डेवलपमेंट तो फिर और भी आगे की चीज़ है. तो वी हैव टू नाउ लुक एंड फोकस ऑन आवर ह्यूमन रिसोर्स, क्योंकि उसकी प्रोडक्टिविटी, उसकी स्किल्स, अब दुनिया जितनी मुश्किल होती जा रही है विथ IT एंड एवरीथिंग, अब इसके साथ हम ज़्यादा देर इसको डिले नहीं कर सकते. इस वक्त हर किस्म की काम को छोड़ के फेडरल और प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट्स को ह्यूमन रिसोर्स डेवलपमेंट पे अब तवज्जो देनी चाहिए, वरना एक तरफ हमारी पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ और दूसरी साथ फिर उसके साथ ये अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट एंड देन द काइंड ऑफ स्किल्स दैट वी हैव, आगे और मुश्किलात होंगी. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज़. अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट जैसे मैंने कहा कि 8% पहुँच गई है. अब इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट ये देखने का है कि हमारी जो आइडियल यूथ है, जो यूथ पॉपुलेशन के अंदर जो हु आर नॉट टेकिंग गोइंग फॉर एनी एजुकेशन और गेटिंग एनी ट्रेनिंग, और दे आर ऑल्सो अनएम्प्लॉयड. दिस इज़ 35%, विच इज़ वेरी हाई. अब ये सारे जॉब मार्केट्स में जब आएंगे विदाउट स्किल्स, तो हम किस तरह उनको अकोमोडेट करेंगे. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. तो सर इसके साथ सर ये जो है इस वक्त हमारा जो IT का आगे और मुश्किलात, जैसे मैंने पहले भी कहा, आएंगी. आर वी रेडी फॉर सच चैलेंजेस, जबकि हम बेसिक एजुकेशन को ही अभी फ़िलहाल नहीं देख रहे। तो मेरा सारा फोकस ये है, अपार्ट फ्रॉम सब चीज़ों ने सब हमारे जो पैनलिस्ट ने मुख्तलिफ बातें की, आई से द ह्यूमन रिसोर्स डेवलपमेंट इज़ आवर बिगेस्ट चैलेंज। थैंक यू सो मच सर।
Thank you very much, Daga Saab. And after this summing up of the points, it would be very interesting to listen to the Deputy Prime Minister. Senator Mohammad Ishaq Dar, the 4th Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan and the 39th Foreign Minister. He's previously served 4 times as Finance Minister of Pakistan, twice as Member of National Assembly, and this term in Senate is his 5th term as Member Senate of Pakistan. He has been previously at different times an ex-officio governor on the boards of the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in the last 25 years. Sir, your profile is so extensive, mashallah, that it would take me a very long time to go through all the points, so I tried to pick out the most important ones. I'm sure everybody in the audience is looking forward to your speech. Please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmadun salli ala Rasul al-Kareem. Chairman, Policy Research and Advisory Council, Mr. Yunus Daga. CEO, Lucky Cement, Mr. Tabba. Chairman, Nutshell Group, Mr. Asfar Asan. Distinguished participants, Mrs. Farina Mazhar. Colleagues, Excellencies, business leaders, scholars, media representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. Please excuse me, I'm having a bad throat, so I'll try to speak as much as I can. I'm pleased to join you at the concluding session of the Pakistan Policy Dialogue 2026, a forum that has brought together key stakeholders to identify the challenges, debate solutions, and outline what must be delivered to unlock Pakistan's full economic potential. The concluding theme, from dialogue to delivery, signals a fundamental shift in how we govern, how we engage globally, and how we mobilize our national potential. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, correcting the economic course is not merely about improving indicators or short-term fixes. It is about strengthening the foundations of our economy. It demands responsible governance, consistency in policy, and we have heard few panelists. I couldn't attend the whole day. I'm sure they would have flagged. The issues are known. And institutions that work transparently with prediction and beyond political cycles. It also requires a modern, technology-enabled government, reforming how services are delivered, reducing leakages, expanding access, and ensuring every citizen benefits from Pakistan's growth story. Ladies and gentlemen, when the government took office, we inherited deep economic imbalance. We acted with a singular priority, Pakistan's long-term interest. Difficult decisions were taken, and political comfort was set aside in preference to discharge the responsibility. For far too long, essential reforms remained trapped in discussion, in committees, task forces, and policy drafts. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, they are now being implemented with clarity and purpose. We are systematically addressing long-standing inefficiencies, including privatization of major public sector enterprises. We heard what Mr. Tabba shared his thoughts. There is no disagreement across the
entire spectrum of the business community that this should be one of the top priority. The privatization of, I think, PIA has been successfully completed after more than 2 decades of effort. This landmark achievement not only, I would say, will modernize the airline, but also will reduce the financial burden on the national exchequer. It has sparked significant interest from both domestic and international investors, boosting confidence in Pakistan's broader privatization program and paving the way for further economic restructuring. On a lighter note, I was telling Mr. Tabba, when the government decided that the whole process will be transparent. The whole nation can see what's going on. And it was a great match between Mr. Tabba, they're both friends of business community and Arif Habib Group. So first of all, he was chipping in with 25 crores and they were rounding off, for example, 115.25 billion and they will say 126 billion. The time came when they jumped to full billion. And I said, thank God, my target was around that probably they would reach 150 billion. So anyway, Mr. Tabba being very prudent and very careful and, very, I would say, acting with very wisdom, he stopped at 134. Obviously, at 135, the other group took, but it indicates one thing, 134 billion of investment is available for another round of privatization in the country. So please don't lock it under short-term deposit. Hopefully, things will be coming up. The second, I would say that reducing the circular debt. We are enforcing payment discipline, strengthening regulators, and building a financially sustainable energy sector. The goal is to ensure that energy supports economic growth instead of constraining it. Number 3, right-sizing and reforming the government. We are eliminating inefficiencies, cutting waste, and reorienting public spending towards productivity and service delivery. These reforms, together with digital governance initiatives, ensure government resources are used effectively for the benefit of the people. I think the earlier panel ended up with one of the panelists saying the last word was expenditure, management, or reduction. But unfortunately, I would say unfortunately, we can have a long debate. Unfortunately, only one indicator would tell you when the policy rate went up, which was the lowest 5.25 in 2017, to 22%, we don't need rocket science. The 2000 debt servicing shot up to 10,000 billion, virtually 10,000 billion within no time, almost 5 times. So you had a very bad. We saw the the graphs which Dhaka Sahab shown every 10 years, decades. So the things we can analyze, we can sit and analyze where things went wrong. Obviously, these reforms, as I said, complement the macroeconomic stability that Pakistanis demand and deserve. I would say a few words. Those who sometimes spread hopeless attitude, I always encourage my friends of the business community, particularly the last interaction I had was as finance minister in 2023 budget. And I won't name them. They would come, business leaders of Pakistan. And in accordance with the previous practice, I engaged them and discussed, because I always think that you never know what golden proposal can come last minute and which should be accommodated. But I think majority of them, when invited and obviously not together but separate for federation, key chambers, etc., they would show great discontentment and disappointment, and they would say they are thinking to sell off the business. I'm talking May 2023, April and May 2023, not too far long. And I say, what is the problem? I said, well, obviously, businesses were down and growth was almost nil there. Costs had gone up, 22%, the policy rate. Who can afford a business? It's better to put, I'm sure, money in the treasury bills and have 22%. Which business will give you net of tax 22%? I'm sure very few. Maybe Tabasab has some secrets, making more than 40-50% per annum. But general return, I'm talking about average. But I always tell them that Pakistan has great potential, and I believe this thing. There is no other country in 2012-13 which was declared macroeconomic unstable country. This is Pakistan. Please recall your memories. Where were you? High inflation, high policy rate, low growth, and predicted to be defaulting within 6 to 8 months, no matter which political party would win the election. What happened? Dr. 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐢𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐧 mentioned it was the first time, and Yunus Dhagasa was part of the team. He was heading power sector. The first time Pakistan completed the country, which was known to be 2 or 3 tranche country and runs away after taking upfront money. The first time it delivered the whole structural program of 12 successful, the reviews. And where did we reach in 2017? We are not talking about any other country, we are talking Pakistan. Macroeconomic stable country, interest rate down to one of the lowest, 5.25, export refinance 3.25, growth 6.3%, reserves still not beaten the maximum, crossed 25 billion, close to 26 billion. So that shows the country has the potential. The business community can lead that growth. But we all know that IMF programs are usually and generally, they are anti-growth. So the focus of this government is fully that having achieved the stability, and by the way, don't forget 2017, Google, please now, what was written about Pakistan economy. Don't look towards neighbor, look to Pakistan. And all rating agencies upgraded your ratings. I went to float sovereign paper, 500 million euro bonds. I was offered 14 times, 7 billion. We only picked up 2 billion. So Pakistan has the potential. It's only a matter of going in the right direction and stopping this cyclical nonsenses in this country. And I was the one who, as the finance minister, kept repeating every year, 2013, 2014, 2015, and Dr. 𝐏𝐚𝐤𝐢𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐧 was part of, again, the economic team in the Ministry of Finance. And we used to give 3 years medium-term macroeconomic framework. 2013 में 2013-16 का दिया, 14-17 का दिया, and kept begging for a chart of economy. But we only care for politics. Nobody paid any heed, and then you were predicted by 2017, you reached 24th global largest economy. You were only 4 notches away from entering the premium economic club of the world, G20. That's what you deserve. You're already nuclear power. God has blessed you with missile power. And the only thing lacking is the full economic flotation and independence. Can Pakistan have it? Of course, indeed. This is my belief, my faith. I would not be joining the government and serving now if I didn't have that belief. We are only 4 notches away. What happened to the same country? This political gimmicks and instability in the country, where it led to. By 2022, you fell to 47th economy of the world. And within next few months, you were predicted to default. I was asked September 2022, 4th time to take up. Every time there's a mess, economic mess, then I'm called upon to come and rescue. And what was being asked at that time? They were giving dates. Again, see the Googles. They were giving dates. Pakistan will default that day. Pakistan will default with that day. Last one's in May 2023. Fitch gave a date that they will default by 30th of June 2023, the max. And I kept saying as Finance Minister of Pakistan, IMF or no IMF, Pakistan will not default. And I meant it. And I worked for that with the team. And alhamdulillah, Pakistan didn't default. So you see, this country has resilience. This leadership in the business community, Pakistan has the acumen. They know how to make money. They know how to take the economic cycle forward. So we are the enablers. And rightly said by one of the panelists, that government must exit from the business. This is the key priority of this government. After PIA, we would be unbundling and unwinding many other areas. I try to do with as much speed as I can as chairman of the Cabinet Committee on Privatization. So our focus is that discos, all these loss-making entries must be get rid of, must be privatized. You see the history, whichever institution you privatize in the last 2-3 decades, you made many times more in terms of collecting taxes in future by their increase in profitability. So be large-hearted. So this government, as I said, has a very clear roadmap, and this is the resolve that Pakistan, frankly, I believe that we have returned to current account surplus, as Daga Sahab just indicated. It's how much? Just less than 2 years. You have worked hard, you contributed, you implemented the structural reforms, where you back again. Your current account deficit has turned into surplus. Your revenue, tax to GDP has increased by 2%. Your inflation has come down to 5.6% CPI. Pakistan Stock Exchange has made a new, new mark and a new record. It also made in 16-17, if you recall. At that time, its market capitalization went to $100 billion at that time. So दूसरी जो प्रॉब्लम होती थी, जो मेरे पास साथी बिजनेस के आते थे, they used to say, साथ पकड़ के, बच्चे we are, अभी by the way, one of the slide was debt. So Pakistan is debt trap. Okay, for a moment I take it that Pakistan is in deep debt business. But have you ever thought, what is our debt to GDP? What are other and compare with other countries? When I left, it was 63%. I triggered in 1999 this Fiscal Responsibility and Debt Limitation Act. It was not imposed by IMF or any other foreign country. It is self-imposed, 60%. When I came back in 2022, it was 73%. It has now gone again under 70%. But what US has, 109% debt to GDP. What UK has after COVID, 100% debt to GDP. But Japan has 257% debt to GDP. So is debt to GDP, high debt to GDP is a constraint? No. What is the solution? Solution is here. You need to reach to a macroeconomic position where when you need to fill your external account difference and gap, you can float your sovereign paper, and the world community should be able to buy that paper, should be willing to buy that paper. And that, this is all facts. And they are available. I'm not talking of just tale stories. 2022-23, your paper was quoted in international markets at that time, sovereign paper at 44%. Even it went down as low as 34%. But when we honored our commitments, it shot up to 80% within a year of the PDM government. Now it is always trading above 100%. Why? Because now that confidence is becoming back. So this country has the potential, and frankly speaking, I used to ask my friends, many of them already have the information, ये जो budget की process is 20, do you know what is the number, by the way, debt and liabilities? So 130 billion US dollars. 130 billion US dollars, including public debt and liabilities. ये इसको classify इस तरह करते हैं कि liabilities वो हैं जो कि institutions ने borrow किया हुआ है foreign exchange में, या कुछ चीज़ें deferred payment में खरीदी हुई हैं इस तरह. But obviously the state has to provide, the central bank to provide the foreign exchange but they will pay the rupees. So one is public debt, which is close to 100 billion. The 30 billion are roughly the liabilities. Have we ever thought that what Allah has blessed this country with? The mineral resources, the hydrocarbons, the stones, you know, the most conservative estimate is $6 to $8 trillion. All we need to do is to work hard together, make a serious effort. 6,000 to 8,000 billion, Allah has blessed resources in Pakistan beneath this land, and your debt is 130 billion US dollars. So it's nothing to worry. I'm not saying that we should just get complacent and just sleep over. You have to work hard, and that effort has to be done consistently by every next government which joins in. The economist policies must be consistent. I think Dhaga Sahab ki ek slide wo keh rahi thi, I'm sure most of us know, we have been talking, discussing budget exercises mein. Consistency is the name of the game. Because as Bilwani Sahab said, I think, industrial policy, agar is saal kuch hogi to agle saal kuch hogi, obviously then you can reach nowhere. So मैं समझता हूँ कि things are shaping up. We should not lose hope. We should work extra hard, and Pakistan has a place to achieve, inshallah. हमारी remittances भी, they have reached 27% से increase हुई है 38. The projection for this year will be 41. We have an issue. An issue is external debt. You are a twin deficit country for ages. You have a rupee deficit, which is a budget deficit, which you have to obviously borrow from rupees from within the system, and you have external current, जैसे कहते हैं current account deficit. So these two twin deficits have killed us, and we have been unable to fix it. There is no quick fix. आपकी को 30 billion का trade deficit है, export minus imports. आपके almost जो remittance हैं, जो मैं बात कर रहा हूँ 2016-17, अभी तो your surplus. Why? Because remittances plus exports minus imports, you are now current account surplus, thanks God. Because otherwise, you need to run to the friendly countries, which have been happening in the past. You have एक number किसी ने दिया 8 to 12, no, it's 12 billion, 8 to 13, 12 billion. Yes, 3 countries you had to take in the last 5-6 years help. 4 billion from China, 5 billion from Saudi Arabia, and 3 billion from UAE. So we must work hard to not resort to borrowing money. We should be making sure, because it has to be export-led growth. One of the slide which we saw, that is the future. You have to plug this gap of the external account gap, and it is not a big amount. All you need is about 10 billion increase in remittances, 10 billion increase in exports, and maybe 10 billion services and other sectors, and you are in business. You will remain surplus. So ये जो एक issue है, debt, public debt वाली है, but it is not, which cannot be managed, and it has to be managed if we have to move forward. Well, a few words about the Foreign Office, where I now have the responsibility mainly, and as Deputy Prime Minister, I do deal with a number of issues, interministerial. I made it a clear commitment the day I joined last year, the Foreign Office, and that was Pakistan's diplomatic engagement must advance Pakistan's economic interests. I called it economic diplomacy. This was my day one in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Khawatino Zad, we have embedded geoeconomics into every major foreign policy channel, and it is, alhamdulillah, delivering. A country which was known to be diplomatic isolated just 3 years back is today, alhamdulillah, is most relevant in the region, most desired to be connected. अभी समझ नहीं आती कि किनको इनवाइट करें और कहाँ जाएं. There's so many invitations on the card and so many desires that, dignitaries who want to visit. Just in next few weeks, you will see 2-3 presidents of Central Asian states will be visiting Pakistan. ये वो कंट्री थी जिसे 2012 में बहुत नाक रगड़ रगड़ के एक वोट से यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल की नॉन परमानेंट मेंबरशिप को जीता था, इलेक्ट हुए थे. दिस टाइम राउंड October 2024, we won 182 versus 5 votes. This is Pakistan's economic policies. So a few words on China. We have converted. I have recently visited in the first week of this year. They were very kind to invite me. They wanted me to the first foreign person visiting in 2026, China. And they are committed to CPEC 2.0. Their program is in line with our Udan Pakistan, productivity and technology, agriculture, livelihood. So we are integrated, and China has always been a great partner. We are also advancing mineral and energy cooperation to support sustainable growth while improving regional connectivity through transport and logistic links, including Gwadar Port and the Karakoram Highway. Karakoram Highway would be soon, starting realignment because of the Dhamra Basha Dam. Pakistan-China all-weather strategic partnership is set to strengthen long-term economic collaboration and deliver tangible benefits for the people of both countries, inshallah. With the United States, our cooperation spans technology, energy, investment, and market access. This includes the finalization of the tariff deal, which ended up better than almost all neighboring countries, 19% tariff, aimed at strengthening Pakistan's export competitiveness and creating new opportunities for trade and growth. Across Europe, we are strengthening GSP-linked access, which the business community wishes and obviously desires to be renewed. We are meeting all the challenges. The wish list of 100-odd was met, and then another 60, and recently the team came of EU, and they visited Pakistan, and it was very positive. We hopefully, it is because the renewal is due in 2027. So it will be a full revisiting of the GSP Plus process. Pakistan is ready to assist. This comment will obviously assist the business community, because this is a very beneficial for our certain sectors, GSP Plus for exports to Europe. Few countries, as an effort on the diplomatic front with those countries like Hungary, Poland, they have already announced they will support us in EU, GSP Plus, by the way. So this is already there. In the Gulf, with Turkey and across the Middle East, major investments and strategic partnerships are accelerating in energy, food, security, logistics, services, and technology. These economic engagements complement our long-standing security cooperation and remain central to Pakistan's FDI strategy. I'm sure you would have noticed that in September this year, September last year, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif signed, after we have been for quite a few months engaged with each other with Saudi, a strategic mutual defense agreement. And it has led to further strengthening the bond and the brotherhood between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. Each Pakistani, I'm sure, want jaan se bhi zyada aziz hai hum har ek ko Haramain Sharif hain. So whereas formally they are the custodian of the two holy mosques, the King of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, we are the obviously uske hum muhafiz Allah ne hame banaya through this agreement. And this has led to desire by many countries who wish to join this sort of arrangement with Pakistan. Allah gave you a great victory in May last year. We exercised full restraint. We did not take any escalating move on our own. We only responded in accordance with the UN Charter. But God has been very kind. Allah blessed Pakistan with great honor and great victory. So we are humbled We want, with all humility, work with respect to each and every nation in the globe, no matter how small, how big. We want equal the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, the respect and dignity of no matter how small or how big a country should be equal. This is the fundamental principle of the international law and order. So we respect this thing. We have again opened a new door to Bangladesh. In August, I personally visited Bangladesh. It was almost after 12 years, but before 12 years, the visit was only to deliver an invitation by one of my former colleague, former Minister of Pakistan, but there was no meaningful engagement, no engagement rather. This time, it was extensive engagements. We are working together. There is a trilateral setup between China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, as we have trilateral setup with Afghanistan as well. So it will all open opportunities and avenues for the business community. The whole effort is to give you an opportunity for export and to do business with all these countries. So I think that Bangladesh, as I said, was a great thing. We are fully connected with the East Asian countries, East Asia, Africa, and God has been kind that at the same time we make sure that the international partnership is based on mutual respect and dignity, and it promotes our economic interests. So that is the prime goal, and this is the KPI which is given to each and every ambassador who is posted abroad now. That please, you have to deliver. You have to serve the business community. You have bring the economic benefits to Pakistan. You will be assessed for your next posting after what you deliver in your tenure. So I think if these policies are continued, even in future, these policies will certainly help tremendously. So we are not only stabilizing today's economy, we are laying foundation for tomorrow. Pakistan's growth must be green, digitally enabled, and human capital driven. Climate smart agriculture, renewable energy, sustainable urban development, and green industrial incentives are central to this agenda and to Pakistan's resilience. And incidentally, the growth is the name of the game now. Having achieved stability, though we know that generally the IMF programs are anti-growth. But we would do our best to go towards that direction now. We'll engage with IMF. And because हम आपस में प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब के साथ डिस्कस कर रहे थे in last few days, तो I said कि any growth less than 2.6%, that is zero growth actually, negative growth. Your population growth is 2.65% roughly. So growth below that is zero, or even at that point, below that is negative. Above that is the net growth after 2.65. So we got to reach back to 2017 goal 6.3%. Can you come at 1, 2, 3? No. You have to just take again. At that time it took 3 years, 3.5 years to reach that point where we achieved 2017 fiscal year growth 6.3%. Now that shows that there is the potential, there is the possibility, and if we work together, obviously we can certainly achieve it, and we should achieve it, inshallah. Our greatest resource is our young population. Every year, Pakistan produces hundreds of thousands of university graduates, including a substantial number of STEM fields, engineers, IT specialists, scientists, doctors, and other skilled professionals. With this talent, Pakistan has immense potential to become the hub of innovation, technology, and knowledge-driven growth. I'm addressing Dhaga Saab's one point about unemployment. Now we got to generate, jobs, opportunities in Pakistan, and this only can come with growth. So growth is the focus of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif as of now, and for the rest of the tenure. Empowering our youth with skills, technology, and opportunity is not just a priority, it is an economic imperative. The government is investing in vocational training, STEM education, digital literacy, and professional development programs to equip young Pakistanis for the jobs of today and the industries of tomorrow. Pakistan demographic dividend will translate into prosperity only if we act decisively and deliver opportunity for every young Pakistani to contribute to the nation's progress. Ladies and gentlemen, this dialogue confirms what we already thinking and saying. Pakistan does not lack diagnosis, intellect, or ambition. We falter when ideas do not translate into execution. Once, one of the former, I'm talking Mia Nawaz Sharif time, one of the former vice president of World Bank was visiting Pakistan, and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif said, "Can you identify 3 issues which Pakistan faces?" She said, implementation, implementation, implementation. So, absolutely, our message is very clear. Implementation is now the measure of leadership. Delivery is now the measure of progress. Results are now the measure of success. We have to be all focused, both the government and the private sector, together. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, the government remains united behind a single national mission to move Pakistan decisively from recurring cycles of crisis towards stability, productivity, and broad-based growth. As we conclude, I extend my sincere appreciation to the Pakistan Research and Advisory Council and to its organizers, Mr. Yunus Dhaga, Mr. Muhammad Ali Tabba, and their colleagues for their dedication in making the dialogue meaningful and forward-looking. Let us leave this dialogue not only wiser, but determined to implement. I repeat, but we should be determined to implement what we have discussed and decided today. Together, we can deliver what Pakistan deserves, inshallah: credible stability, a stronger economy, and prosperity that reaches every home. I thank you all. I have taken a lot of your time. Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Saab, for your enlightening speech. We appreciate your insights and your responses and views on the key takeaways presented by Dhaga Saab. Thank you for reiterating that the fundamentals are strong, confidence is returning, and what is needed is effort and seriousness of purpose. Thank you for also highlighting the efforts being undertaken by you and your team on the foreign relations front and how your efforts are geared towards boosting exports and creating partnerships. At the end of this session, we now would like to present some souvenirs. Is the team ready? Ishaq Dar Saab, I would request you to please present a token of our appreciation to Muhammad Ali Tabba Saab, CEO Lucky Cement. And to present the shield to Senator Muhammad Ishaq Dar, I'd request Yunus Dhaga Saab and Asfar Ehsan to please do the honors. I think we could do with some claps. Thank you. And now for the last group photo of the day, if everyone could please line up. Sir Suhail Aman, if you could please also join us on stage. Gentlemen, lunch is served. Please make your way to the hall outside. Thank you very much for joining us at the Pakistan Policy Dialogue. Thank you for being here, and we hope to see you soon at our event.